how long has the qualification of beer sommelier actually existed for?
I'm going to say around 20 years.
Oh, that's long.
So it used to be the Stewart Brewing Distillery. So the IBD used to run it. Then COVID happened. And then the IBD sort of but let the qualification go. So they were focusing on the brewers and distillers. And then there was a Beer and Cider Academy where Gabe Cook is the ciderologist. So he used to run the cider part of the course.
Ciderologist, that's the thing as well.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Gabe would be a good one, actually.
Okay.
He's a lovely bloke.
Yeah, needs to do a cider episode. Yeah. Okay.
He's literally mad. I'll put you in contact.
Yeah.
And then COVID happened. WSET were really focused on moving into beer. So they're doing the level 1, level 2. And then there's like 240 beer sommeliers in the world. It's different from the Cicerone, which is sort of American led. And
what's that? That's a different qualification.
That's a different qualification. Yeah. Similar, but different, slightly different criteria. And yeah, with the beer sommelier accreditation, Paul Lunny that runs Cask was like, we really need to restart this. And I'm like the hype man, so I'll go absolutely get you involved. And so, yeah, in a year's worth of a small sort of team, we managed to get it up and running again to create the guild. And then actually Sam Line was the first new beer sommelier in about 4 years, which was amazing as my sort of Padawan. And so, yeah, it's a warm, fuzzy feeling, but that is the journey, which is now the Guild of Beer Sommeliers.
Okay, and so with the Guild of Beer Sommeliers, is there an actual sort of test or qualification for it, or yeah? So what does that look like?
So what I had to do back along, because it was quite a long time ago, so it was general beer appreciation course, then an advanced course, then how to judge beer course, which go through different judging criteria for different competitions, which is probably my favorite part of it, because it removes personal preference. And that's where...
So you're objectively assessing this.
Exactly. Yeah. Is it true to type?
Yes.
Versus do you like it? Would you have another? This sort of stuff. There's a beer and food course. I was pretty well versed at that. And then there was blind tasting on sensory analysis. So off flavors of 8 to 16 different off flavors, all in quite a sort of a low flavor lager.
Yes.
So
they put the flavor into a lager as a sort of base, and then you pick out what the off note is.
How butyric.
Because I was going to say, it's quite hard to brew for an off flavor. Right?
Well, that's something. But yeah, so then there's the spikes for the off flavor sensory analysis, and then there was another blind tasting in styles of beer. So Alex Barlow, again, he's forgotten more about beer than I'll ever know. He is the main assessor for all the beer sommeliers that have ever been accredited. It's been Brazil, Norway. It's amazing what he's done. And then you'd have to name by sort of sight, aroma, taste. Is it a German style Helles lager? Is it a Flanders red? You have to get as close to a region as possible. So it's not quite as insanely advanced as the Masters of Wine.
Yeah.
But the beer equivalent also.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get there one day. I mean, like with the number of breweries now and the number of styles available in pubs, and I guess this sort of need for people who sell beer to be more informed about what it is they're selling.
Yeah, you know it, mate.
Yeah, it's the whole thing is gonna have to kind of rise up in that sense. And who's to say in another 5 to 10 years we don't have kind of beer outlets where there's some sort of incredible... I mean, you tell me, maybe there's already places like this where it's like a kind of... It's treated exactly the same as a wine bar, right? And because I feel like at the moment, if I go into like a sort of really beer specialist bar, I'm thinking like there's places like Bristol, for example. There's some of these bars where it's like, 20, 30 beers on draft, and many, many more in bottles and everything. And certainly the guys, like, they kind of know stuff, but it's not necessarily to the same sort of level as certain wine bars where it's kind of insane levels of...
Yeah, it's a big thing, and yeah, I'll refrain from being militant. Like, there's the craft mentality, and I've always said this: craft has been the best and the worst thing to happen to the beer industry, in my opinion, in this country, because the best thing about it's got people really enthusiastic about beer. It's similar to listen to the rum one. It's also got loads of people really opinionated about beer
Mm-hmm.
without the basis of education first. And I'm 13 years on now. I mean, I'll be at brewery now 16 years. I still spend a lot of my time asking people that either worked in the industry or avid beer drinkers, what's the difference between ale and lager? And still 98% people don't know the difference. I'm going to carry on doing this, dude.
I've seen you quite a lot of seminars and talks over the years. A lot of them start with that question.
Yeah, and they still do.
Because it's quite arresting. Because people, let's ask that question, and I'll ask that question in a minute.
Yeah.
But I think people have an idea, a pretty good idea from what the liquid in the glass side of it. Like, I kind of know what to expect when I order a lager. Not necessarily it's always going to fall into that same archetype, but
some special.
Yeah, I know. You would expect it to be pretty light in character, pretty fizzy, pretty pale in color, all that kind of stuff. And ale, well, much sort of broader kind of range of products. But like you always say when I hear you ask this question, most people don't understand from a production point of view how they differ. I think it's a good starting point. So let's maybe start by talking a bit about how beer is made. And clearly we don't have enough time, or even enough beer possibly.
Or I'm gonna caveat that, or someone with enough knowledge. So I urge you to go and speak to a master brewer. I'm gonna make it really clear. I'm not a brewer.
You're not a brewer, no, but you drink a lot of beer.
Yeah.
And have tasted a lot of beer, and you talk about beer a lot.
I do, yeah.
And we've both met master brewers who aren't great at talking. So
Yeah.
So, I mean, what is the difference between an ale and a lager?
I'll take it back one step.
Yeah.
There's only 3 types of beer in the world: ale, lager, and lambic. Because that's going back to those questions. A lot of the time, go, I don't like ale. Do like lager. And where does stout come in?
Yeah.
Stout, ale, top fermenting. So it's all about fermentation. Top fermenting yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, ale yeast, ferments at warmer temperatures. Fruity, lovely esters. Ale yeast, top. Lager yeast, bottom. Original one was Saccharomyces pastorianus, discovered in Tower Pilsen,
Yes.
Czech Republic. And when I say that, you can see it, depending on the audience, it's penny drops, just going, really? And I'll go, you can use that as pub ammo. Because I've also got that friend that thinks they know about beer because they love a certain beer or brand more than beer. And that's lager, bottom fermenting. Which is a German word for warehouse. And then there's lambic, so spontaneous fermentation. So a lot like ciders, wild yeasts, basically infected beers.
You don't get to choose the yeast kind of thing. So two are the more selective yeast.
Yeah.
For a different style of fermentation. And the other one is, let's just go for this, see what happens.
Yeah. And encourage that breadth. And that's where acidity comes in. And I think that's the beautiful versatility of beer. And I'm not going to throw gauntlet down, only because I was listening to the wine one the other day. Wine super versatile. Yes, it is. Arguably, I'd put it out there that beer might be more versatile.
Okay.
Because it can be now 0.5% needs an alcohol, up to 24% naturally fermented, epically sweet, massively acidic. So yeah, I'll put it out there.
Interesting. Yeah. Let's come back to that when we get to sort of talking about applications and matching of food.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely a relevant part of the conversation, but already you make a good case for it. Let's face it, there's no decent 0.5% wines out there.
Porky, valid point.
Okay, so back to production. We've only got 3 styles of beer there. And within that, I guess, Lambic is pretty niche, right? There's not so many of those, at least I don't think.
Not in this country, but then there was a little bit of a mini sour beer boom.
Yes.
It's the next big thing. And then it sort of disappeared. No one really talks about it. You see some commercial sort of, I suppose, Thornbridge Tart, probably the most widespread. It's amazing beer.
Yeah.
And that was
in the supermarkets and everything, wasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is the off-trade leads the way. And sometimes the off-trade is that proliferation of beer. The signposts aren't quite there for everyone to cope with. As I go, that's a bit off track. I do. But yeah, Lamberts are out there, but not so many in this country. A lot in Belgium.
Yes. I really like a sour beer. I think they're great. I mean, it depends on the level of acidity. Sometimes they're so sour that I don't even want one. And other times it's just that little hint of acidity, like someone squeezed a bit of lemon juice in there. And that's super sessionable, you know?
Exactly. And yeah, tart's a perfect example. I've got one that is big and sour as well. And I think that's the other thing about beer. Yeah, the biggest Jedi mind trick. I mean, even you saying I only have one, that's cool. That's okay.
Oh yeah, it's weird that I said it as a negative. That says a lot about me, I think.
Yeah. But there's that Moorishness and arbitrary unit for beer has been pint in this country. Forever.
Yeah. What do you think about pints? Again, taking us off track.
I love a pint.
Yeah.
And it's that situation side of things. Going down the pub, having a pint, pop down to the Mariners, have a pint of Sea Fury, weather's good, it's a beautiful thing. But when analysing flavour, put the beer in a wine glass. Or you've got 330ml can of beer, that the habitual nature of behaviours is that's mind. Don't share that. It's can. But, one 20ml glass of wine, each small glass of wine each, so you can share the sort can, as long as you sort of do it sensibly and go on a flavour journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're definitely getting off track already, but the whole idea of a can fitting in your hand and it being yours, a wine bottle, it's in your hand, but it's big.
Yeah.
It's ours. Maybe later on we should talk a little bit about beer formats. I think that's interesting because, I like the psychology of packaging and branding and everything. And I think that's an interesting line of conversation. So, yeah, production. What do we start with? Malts?
Malt, fermentable sugars.
Yeah, so because it's not just barley, right? Is it rice, corn, or much? So maybe let's just briefly talk through them and what sort of flavours they contribute towards an end product.
Well, I suppose it's that in itself, like barley, and that's a whole world. Like each harvest, where it's come from the maltsters itself, it's similar maltsters that you use in whiskies. That's vastly different, from super pale to like German Rauchbiers that are absolutely smoked and as black as a Guinness. That's a lager, and that's just malt, let alone the maize, the corn, any other adjuncts, rice, again, any fermentable sugars.
Yeah.
And then the hops, which are just, again, like craft has proliferated.
Are there limitations on what you can put into a beer and call it a beer in terms of cereals? Because like rice, I guess I wouldn't really class it as a cereal, but it sort of is.
Yeah.
And sugar, it goes into some, like candy sugar and things like that goes into some beers, so that's sort of permissible.
Yeah.
Where is the line cross? What happens if I brew with grapes and malt combined? Is that like...
Yeah, great beers are out there.
I really...
Yeah. But then you get into the made wine territory as well. And that's where cider... Because ironically, beer's so big, but the focus has never been on beer for that sort of thing. Things have been made allowed, apart from Germany with the purity law, which has stood from 1466, which is amazing. The Reinheitsgebot, that is malt, hops, yeast, and water.
That's where you're allowed to make beer from?
No fruit.
Interesting.
Yeah. Whereas,
and no other grain other than malted barley?
Barley, oats, so you can still use other grains. And other sort of those fermentable sugars. But if we think across the border, if you think Belgium, coriander, lime, the spice trade, all of that, that's absolutely fine. And again, two super different cultures in beer, but still the same respect and romanticism for beer.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess if you take the Belgian approach, it's sort of the celebration of flavours and trade and expressing, crazy strengths and weight of beers.
I'm going to catch you again.
Oh God, what did I do?
Crazy strengths.
Well, some of them are.
Some of them are strong.
Yeah, not all of them, of course.
But when you get a sorry, Tristan, sorry. But this is part of the reconditioning of people.
Yeah.
Of going 12% beer, couldn't drink a pint of that.
Yeah.
No one told you how to drink a pint.
No.
But then you ask people about wines, going, yeah, love Merlot, 40% Merlot, going, well, that's crazy strong. But no, not really.
No, not compared to a wine. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but I think my point was more about how the diversity earlier in Belgian beer. Like from the sort of crazy strength to, I mean, there's lagers there, right, as well, and some of the flavors that come through, and whereas and you probably will certainly correct me because I probably am wrong here. German beer feels slightly more sort of standardized in a way, like.
Yeah, I suppose if we think of, definitely not to take away the impact that German brewing's had on the planet, because that's a whole different ballgame. But I think, Augustiner Helles lager versus a Bamberg Rauch lager, they ooze class, but they're vastly, vastly different. So there is more control, but it's a very domestic market, the German market as well. Not a huge amount of export.
So they're playing to a kind of very kind of defined taste. Yeah.
And pride.
Yes.
Again, talk about imposter syndrome regularly today, Tristan. I judged in the European beer style with Alex Barlow, actually. And I judged in beer competitions. It's 200 judges from all over the world. And there's little old me. I was pretty freshly qualified then as well. And went there. It's like, wow. Like 200 beer judges from all over the world. And I was on the table, it was in Munich, and it was for the München Helles style. There's a moment's silence.
Ice to Eskimos, this kind of thing then. You're tasting their beer in that, yeah.
Yeah, serious. But we had a moment of silence because we had this style of beer in Munich.
Oh, so it's like a special thing.
Everyone 200 people had to be silent in the room. Wow.
There's not many nations that do moments of silence for beer, is there?
Well, exactly. I sat next to like a 13th generation master brewer that was, I think she was my age. Like, wow, just the beer geek. But I'm here, but hopefully paying homage of telling that story. And this gives me even a little bit more conviction in why I do what I do. Because we need some of that. Even if it's an iota of that, I think in this country, then we're going to move forward.
Sure. Okay, so we talked a little bit about malt, so it's different types of malt, and then it's the way the malt has been processed as well. So you've got different sort of roast levels on it. So that's how you get this sort of dark chocolate malts, because it's basically been baked, right? And then different varieties of malt as well within all that. So suffice to say, it's absolutely vast. Are there any favourites that you have that you come across, ones that are using specific types of beer or beers that...
I like a high colour caramel or a caramel. I remember trying that for the first with Stewart, Howe, my sort of beer hero, of eating it and going, that's amazing because it's inherent sweetness. And it reminds you of Horlicks and biscuits and digestive.
Like malty.
Yeah. And that's, I suppose the most formative beer in my life has been Doom Bar. And that, at the time, that was a big part of Doom Bar. The colour, that richness. It's like, caramel is probably the one for me. I think it was Simpson's maltsters that were, and that's an art form in itself. And except you, more than I do.
Yeah,
it's incredible.
Yeah, I want to get a maltster on the show at some point because it's so important to beer and whiskey, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think it's a conversation worth having. I've been to the maltings at Port Ellen once and learned a lot about whiskey just from going to see how barley is dealt with. Yeah, it's fascinating, a science into itself, an art, like you say. If I want to make a strong beer, do I just put more malt in? Is that kind of it?
Yeah, we've got a quadruple. We'll try a little bit later. So more malt, more sugar. If you've got high acting yeast, they eat more sugar to create more alcohol.
So you need the yeast to be sort of balanced with the sort of how much malt you're putting into this beer.
And it needs to be a trained yeast as well. Because some yeast will not surpass 6%. They go, oh no, I'm done. Done my work. Or then get another yeast. I mean, most at the breweries, we've got slurry yeast that will propagate and keep. And that, I think, if we go sort of into yeast from malt, that's the other secret ingredient that people don't really talk about. There's the various advertising campaigns back along of 20 years ago of hot water, malt, and yeast. But we still don't talk about yeast enough and different yeast varieties.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is it's so unsexy sounding because it sounds like an infection, doesn't it? And so it's really hard to sort of polish that turd and glamorize it a little bit, even though, like you say, it's everything. It's where, like you say, you eat a nice piece of malt and it has these flavors of malt or caramel or it might be coffee or chocolate. Great. But if that was the only flavor you were going to get in the final beer, it would be a bit bland, right? So the rest of it has to come from what the yeast does to that substrate, and of course the hops. But so much of it in the sort of realms of fruity is from yeast, right?
It's sweet shop aromas. Some of the Belgian yeast, acetone, you know, it smells like pear drops. And that's the sort of going back to the various. I've got all these things from doing beer tastings in the back of my mind going, I don't drink lager, it's full of chemicals. It's like, well, everything's full of chemicals.
That's flavour.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no sweets were harmed in making this Belgian triple. It is a natural byproduct from the yeast interacting with these sugars, these malt sugars, these hops, and creates this incredible aroma.
Okay, can we just say something now? Because
we've got empty glass. I will open. Open something light.
Yeah, something light to start with, because I think it's good to have beer in hand while we think about this. I'll let you. This your brother Sommelier. He's even got like a white waiter's cloth that he's that we're drying down the can with.
I don't want to drip stuff on Paul's lovely.
No. Okay. So it begins. So this is a lager.
This is a lager indeed. It's one of my desert island beers. This is Offshore. So this is block fermenting yeast, Pilsner malt. So it's us definitely dropping the cap to the town of Pilsen in ingredients, but I think in style it's more sort of German Helles until we put a load of New World hops in.
Right. So you've said Pilsner, and then Helles. So, and then you've said it changes again because of the hops. So what are the sort of three different categories it's sort of switching between them? And so how would you separate Helles, from a Pilsner?
I suppose origin, but Helles, German, proper green aromas. If you think of Augustina Helles's, that's my archetypal from Munich. And I think it's German word for light.
Okay.
Whereas the lager was discovered, lagerine was a brewing process before the lager yeast was discovered in Pilsen. The Czech lagers are generally, there are still pale, and there are more pale lagers now in the Czech Republic. But from Staropramen, deep maltier characters, still old world hops, so peppery, earthy. So that sort of Germanic hop. Sars is a famous Czech hop used in a lot of lagers. And that's where the New World hop comes in. And again, I spent a lot of time sort of delving into the blogs and going, can I name that hop variety? And there's so many New World hops. And that's why I categorize them into New World now, because they change. And this is one thing that I found out early, speaking to Stewart a lot, that the hardest thing is to brew a consistent beer, because in whiskey, more so in wine, like wine, perfect example actually, vintages. Up 2009 was amazing in Barolo, and then 2011 not so good because of the harvest. It's like a wicked get out of jail free guy. If any beer changes, people lose them. But beer changes all the time. Every brew, and goes back to the tasting panel. Every malt variety, if we think of average beer is using 4 different malt varieties, sometimes 3 hop varieties. The yeast is probably the most consistent. The water, if you haven't got a water treatment plant, the water down here in Cornwall, the chemical composition of the water is completely different from the summer to the water left to the winter because of all the treatment, all the visitors we get. Like, that's a hard task to make something week in, week out. And it goes, respect to Stewart, like hardest beers to brew in the world are the Budweisers, the Carlings, the Coorses, because you've got no room to hide. Like,
and you've got millions and millions of people that are constantly stress testing your formula, right?
Yes, exactly. And that sort of showed beer in a slightly different way to me. So sort of German, Czech in ingredients, German in small style because it's very, very.
So you're saying it's Czech because of the hopping of it, is that right?
It was the malts.
The malts, okay, the malts.
So Pilsner malt, but very light, so it's more German in colour. But the New World hops.
So New World hops, which would be, because you said Old World hops is more sort of like spicy, earthy. New World, you're talking more about sort of that funky, like citra type.
Citrus, tropical fruits.
Yeah. So it's sort of, I mean, I'm going to mash this up not really badly, and I'm only doing it so that you can correct me. But so it's
so kind.
So
me look clever, dude.
So it's like it's sort of somewhere between German and Czech, but then it's also got this sort of like New World IPA-ish kind of thing on it as well.
That's perfectly summarised.
Okay, cool.
Literally couldn't say that myself. And I think that is the impact of New World hops. That then, if you put this next to a load of other lagers, then it has a point of difference. I've got loads of blind tastings with Offshore.
It's good, eh?
Oh, it's great.
I mean, I drink this beer quite a lot, but talking about it and then drinking it and sort of thinking about all the work and the influences that have gone into it does make you appreciate it more.
Yeah. And obviously the company.
But yeah, it's... do you see... I mean, there'll obviously always be a place for lighter styles, like lighter lagers.
Yeah.
So you more like your pub lagers. But in a lot of canned products and craft brewing products, it feels like you kind of got to have a lager a bit like this, where it's got that sort of new, little bit of hoppy funk on the top of it.
Yeah.
So it's a sort of, and again, I don't want to sort of mess up my words here. But like I guess like a little bit more characterful than what you consider to be a traditional lager in this country. Yeah. But not as sort of heavy going as like an IPA or,
And I think the other thing, as I've sort of not necessarily grown, but exposed to more in the industry within the business, people's drinking habits, beer drinkers are fascinating, because there is the habitual nature of brand awareness, because this is my new sort of question in the various festivals or talks that I do. Is, hands up for wine drinkers. And most people put their hand up. Ask a couple people, what do you drink? What do you like drinking? Malbec, Merlot, Sauvignon. Old World and New World. Oh, I like New World, New Zealand Sauvignon. Then I go back to the how about beer drinkers? What do you drink? Stella, Madri, Guinness, Krombacher. And people would say Krombacher, go, yeah, I know my beer. Cool. And then I go, oh, you all fall into my trap. Because you all mentioned brands, whereas the wine drinkers have mentioned great varieties, so they has a sense of ingredient. That's why the wine world's been great, man. You walk down a supermarket aisle, South Africa Chenin, New Zealand Sauvignon, a Provence Rosé. Then you walk down beer aisle now. It's great because like there's more beers choices now than ever. But what the signposts? You got double milkshake IPAs, double dry hop milkshake IPAs. Next to a Belgian double. It's like, cool. It's just...
They don't taste anything like each other. Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. It's just sort of craft beer and not craft beer and mass market lager section, right?
You got it, man.
And even they're not signposted. You just kind of look for the big boxes or the small boxes.
Yeah. Am I having a party? Or should I go on this bit of journey experiment for a 3 for 2?
That's it.
Literally, the purchasing habits are completely different with beer drinkers.
Yeah, it's so true. I never thought about that. Like all the sort of, signposting by country in wine, which it still isn't necessarily the best way to do it. Like I think it'd be better if it was signposted by occasion or by flavour group.
Nice.
Yeah. A bit like what we do in Black Rock and with the whiskey. It's actually, that's much more useful information. Even like, I know a bit about wine, but when I go to the supermarket, I'm like, well, unless I have a specific idea of both the grape and the country that I want, and most of the time I don't, I just want a specific wine for a specific occasion.
Yeah.
The country origin is useless to me unless I'm like, well, I want to support wine growers from this country today.
Yeah. Or have an affiliation with a certain country.
Yeah.
Or I know what I liked. But
Or I mean Italian food, so I want an Italian wine.
Yeah. But that at least there is a signpost.
Yes.
That is more sophisticated than craft big. And I think that's divisive in itself.
Yeah.
Now don't get back on a sort of craft brand.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about yeast, and I mean that's just the whole thing into itself. And we've talked a bit about hops, old and new. I mean, within the hop thing, there's certain sort of specific varieties that often get put on labels and bottles and things like that. Is it worth mentioning some of them and how, what we might expect it to taste like? And
I think Citra, you mentioned Citra earlier on, like big alpha acids. So alpha acids, when boiled, they turn to isoalpha acids. That's where the majority of the business comes from beer, from hops or stock, and whether it's pellets or flowers. But that same thing, caveat that with the wine piece, hop harvest are completely different each year. So any beer that is reliant on a singular hop variety, we used to name them back along. I think we used to name them in Atlantic because we always used to have Cascade, Citra, and something else. But one year, I think it was 2012, Citra was completely different. So do we stick to our guns and keep everything in print and use that?
And it's different.
And it's a different beer, or do we find a hop similar to the
strength of the
year before?
Yeah.
And so now that's why I generally use New World hops, because I know next year it might be a different hop.
Yeah.
It might not be Cascade and Offshore. And I think it's playing it safe, but it's also being honest, being able to have that narrative, really. But yeah, Citra, getting around the tangent. Oh, this is going to be good.
No, that's all right.
Citra, pineapple, tropical, citrus, all of what the name suggests. SARS, that Czech hop, Old World, peppery, grassy. But then we look at New World being the States, New Zealand, and looking at those big American pale ale.
Mm-hmm. Cascade you mentioned as well.
Cascade, similar to Citra,
okay.
Sort of piney. So, I mean, both Old World, New World have an element of pine, but if we think, again, best analogy for me is New World Sauvignon versus Sancerre.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sancerre, elegant, refined, quite not necessarily withdrawn, but its own entity. And then New Zealand Sauvignon, same grape variety, punching in the face with a bunch of gooseberries.
When you say New World, you're obviously talking about varieties, but are they literally grown there as well, or are we growing some of these hops over here? Or
we don't necessarily have the climate to grow. We could grow the same hop varieties, but they won't have the same amount of alpha acids.
Okay. So we grow old wild hops in this country.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fuggles, Northern Brewer, but the hop industry isn't what it was.
No, it used to be huge, right?
Massive.
Yeah.
Kent, Hereford. But I think this is the other thing of, ironically, I've probably studied more about other countries' beers than my own. And I suppose that's the next journey for me as we sort of go into sort of cask ale.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that in a bit when we go into cask ale, because it's funny, isn't it? With all this sort of range of beers that's available now, it's easy to misplace sort of traditional British beers, which are a unique style, aren't they?
Yeah.
They really are.
Yeah, and there's a lot of, we'll
get to it in a sec. Yeah. So we talked a bit about the base materials, which are vast, but obviously specifically malt. We talked a bit about yeast, and we talked a bit about hops, and even mentioned water.
Yeah.
So just on a sort of production flow, and again, there's obviously variances here depending on style. How does all this come together? I get my malt arrives at a brewery. Obviously, I've got my water coming in. I may or may not be treating it and mineralizing it so that it's consistent. I've got my yeast ready to go, and the hops are sat there too. Just take me through sort of each stage of production as to how it's actually brewed.
It's where any brewers listening will cringe. So again, most of my job is speaking to other people, the general public. So ultimately, mill the grain, expose the center, whatever it would be. That's where your sugars are, fermentable sugars. Then goes into a mash tun, around 60 to 64 degrees, warm water, sparge. Then you take off that brewer's work. It's generally just malt at that point, or fermentable sugars, a bit of grains. Then goes from sort of that 60 degree-ish into a kettle or a copper, because it used to be made of copper, mainly with a lot of stainless steel now. That's where the hops are added. So hops are generally added in 3 stages: bittering for body, and then for aroma. They can be put in later for dry hopping as well, because it's a big thing.
Yes.
So then you've got still no beer at that point, because no fermentation. Then it gets put through a cooler down to about 20 degrees. Yeast likes behaving sort of 20 to 24, 25 degrees, especially beer yeast.
Is it obvious? Because that's quite low compared to some spirits produced. Like say for rum, for example, and in tequila, fermentations will get up to 30, even 35. Obviously, different yeasts, or different strains of But yeah, they'll go pretty high. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was at a tequila distillery when I was in Mexico last year, and we were walking past the fermenters, and the owner of the distillery was like, "Yes, these fermentations, it shows the temperature." I was like, "That's 35 degrees Celsius in there." He went, "Yeah, that's a bit hot."
that's a robust yeast.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it? But obviously, it's a different type of yeast doing a different type of thing. I mean, all from the same species, but they've got a different task at hand. Obviously, with spirit stuff that tends to be slightly stronger than beer. Usually.
Yeah. No, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, goes into fermentation vessel, add the yeast creates alcohol.
And that's when the hops for dry hopping go as well.
Dry hopping, you could, but with a lot going on anyway, probably do that in a separate tank.
Okay.
We do it in conditioning tank.
Got you. So after fermentation's happened. Yeah.
Exactly. And also, there's centrifuges in a lot of breweries now as well, just to put out in sediment.
Yeah, they whirlpool it basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That big version of that test tube thing you see on science now.
Yeah. Magnetic stirrer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, centrifuge.
Yeah. And then conditioning. And so conditioning at really low temperatures is lagering.
Yeah.
Or even sub-zero temperatures is lagering. So we condition sort of 4 degrees, and that lets everything mature and settle, and that's where you can put your dry hops in.
So the lager, we're back to the sort of first question again. The lager thing it's actually two parts then. And one is the bottom fermenting yeast, and the other one is the low temperature waiting around afterwards.
Yeah, this is classic brewing industry as well. In thinking beer's nearly 10,000 years old. Lagering is a brewing process, not necessarily a style of beer.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So lagers is defined by bottom fermenting yeast.
Yeah.
But the Germans were lagering beer in the pre-refrigeration in those sort of, if you go to Munich now, they've still got the beer halls underneath.
Right, yeah. Like ice stores kind of thing underground to keep it cold. Yeah.
That's where they would lager an ale.
Yeah.
Just to confuse people even more.
And were they were doing that, was that out of were they trying to achieve a certain style by doing that, or were they doing it out of necessity because of temperature?
Or it's maturation.
Right.
Yeah. It lets everything settle down. Because post-fermentation, when yeast is still active, it generally goes, that's where you get more aggressive compounds like sulfur come out. H2S, DMS. Like the sulfur loves yeast and warm.
Yeah.
Cold goes, no.
Okay, so it's sort of just cleaning up the product and clarifying the product and all that sort of thing.
I suppose it reabsorbs any harsh notes. It's like mature wine. But yeah, so the Germans invented lagering, but not lager.
So this difference between hot hopping and dry hopping is one, correct me if I'm wrong, largely of do I want bitterness or do I bitterness and aromatics, or do I want just aromatics?
Same on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I suppose it's tea. Putting a tea bag into cold tea, you're not going to get all that
tannin. Yeah. So by doing it afterwards, you're just getting those top notes, but not all the sort of bitterness that comes with hops as well.
I think this is a perfect example of you've got those New World hops, but without that intense bitterness, because we've been slightly conditioned with sort of all these IPAs, pale ales, that with all those big citrus aromas, it's going to be quite aggressive and so back of your palate. But it doesn't have to be that way. So
were some of the hops on this added post-fermentation? Yeah, dry hopped. Okay. Cool. Right. It's becoming clearer to me.
Beer.
Yeah. Next beer, yeah. What do we do?
Let's stick with lager.
Okay, cool.
I think.
You should try that near you. I already know.
As we're sort of towards our end of our lager chat, let's go Czech.
Okay. I think they're the biggest consumers of beer per capita in the world.
Apparently so.
Yeah. Like crazy. I read this recently. I think it's 150 litres per person per year. I don't know if that includes children.
I hope not.
I hope not, but as a statistic.
Yeah.
But even if it's just adults, that's a pint a day, basically, which is insane. I believe, again, these things do stick in my head for some reason. Second place is Austria.
Okay.
And they drink about half the amount of beer per capita. So Czech Republic
way out.
are just so way out on their own.
Well, again, fabric of society and culture. And I think this is why I like doing lager tasting, is just these two lagers, when we have such a vision of what lager is, pale, reasonably delicate, not a lot of flavour going on. This is honey, caramel.
Not that pale.
Not that pale, but no, exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, for anyone just listening, Staropramen, it's darker than gold. It's more like amber, right?
Yeah.
Especially in this glass. I suppose the base of this glass is much narrower than a pint glass, and no wider than a
Gold.
pint. Yeah, it is dark, isn't it? And yeah, there's kind of some caramelly toffee notes on it. It's got, but there's some freshness there as well. You know, it's not just like weighty kind of insipid. And then
It's sort of cut grass and hay versus that citrus that you got from Offshore, and that is that new world, old world, worlds apart.
yeah. You think with lager, it's always best to serve it like really cold?
I would say sub 8. I think when you go below 4, you're killing flavors, and killing aromas, or making them really subdued. And above 13, like there's always an element of dimethyl sulfate in lagers, especially because that's a natural byproduct from lager yeast. Once you go above 13, those sulfuric compounds go, yeah, I love this, and then that's where.
Okay, so you kind of they start coming out a little bit more. Yeah, interesting. So dimethyl sulfate is sulfury, kind of could be cabbagey, eggy kind of thing.
DMS more butterscotchy, H2S. Eskier eggs.
Right, okay. DMS is the butterscotch one. Yeah, I remember this now.
Butterscotch sweet corn.
Yeah, the old tasting panel days. Yeah, DMS. Cool.
Oh, that was back along.
Yeah. Right, got it. Okay. That's a very different liquid, and I mean, just obviously both lagers, and yet worlds apart, right?
Yeah. So that again, I've got all these tastings in my mind. For people that say don't like lager, okay, that's like, and then there's people say I don't like beer. It's like, for me, that's like saying I don't like music.
Yeah.
There's a lot of beers out.
Someone not to be trusted.
Yeah. Very, very true. And that's just 2 lagers.
And probably not even the full extent. Didn't you say you got another lager that's like really weird?
Let's do that. I think as we're on the roll, let's do that.
Let's finish the lager journey.
Yes. Here.
Wow, I've never seen that before, and if I did, I wouldn't think it was a lager.
No. Very, very interesting. Oh, in the ice bucket, labels falling off. And this is what I mean about the culture. This is not untoward or abnormal in the town of Bamberg. So this is a super famous style that originated and made famous in Bamberg. So this is called Bamberg Rauchbier. So it's a smoked beer. But you can all leave. Well, I can see the excitement and fear in your eyes. Of it looks like a stout.
Yeah, it looks like a stout bottle, right? I mean, it's even got the same sort of colour coordination as the sort of old Guinness, the old Guinness originals, whatever it is.
Yeah, like the import.
Yeah.
The Nigerian kits.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Same colour. I mean, it's same colour. Like it's red, creamy colour, dark bottle.
Mm-hmm.
So the smoking part of it, how's that introduced? Is it smoked malt?
Flame and malt. Still flame now.
Right.
No, from what I gather, no cold confounding.
Okay.
The anticipation in your eye. You might not have had this sort of beer before.
I don't think I have.
And if you haven't, I'm like really chuffed with myself. Mate.
Yeah, no,
Give a Tristan Stevenson a beer, the drink that he's not had.
Well, there's lots of beers I've not had.
Well, this beer blew one.
Whoa.
Yeah. Frazzles, ashtray.
Yeah, it's definitely bacon. Flame Good is right. It's got that sort of barbecue burger thing going on.
Yeah.
It's very sort of sweet type smoke. It's like not at all sooty. It's like sort of, yeah, it sounds like something like the tasting notes side really well on a sort of American diner menu. It's like barbecue maple.
Yeah. It is barbecue, but there's still like there's sort of medicinal TCP in there. There's all those incredible phenolics. And I remember it was Stewart again. Got a lot to owe to Stewart. He let me try this beer because I was going on my journey. I would have been about 4 years in, just in my mind. It's one of those things that didn't know beer could taste awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone who ever gets obsessed with anything in a sort of creative space, you have to have an aha moment like that, where you see or experience or hear or taste something that kind of changes your whole. It changes the rules of the game. That you think you're playing. You know, you're like, oh, it can be like that. I've had it with coffee, I've had it with whiskey, rum, and so on. Like, it's just an eye-opening experience that shapes your entire perspective on it.
Or reshapes it. Yeah, thinking that you're not malleable, and then suddenly you have to. It's the game changer.
How strong is this?
5.2.
Okay.
Really? 5.1.
5.1. You're on the wrong layout. Is it expensive?
No, you're thinking about £2 a bottle.
Right.
But for the experience, for the reaction, for what it gets, this is a lager, and that's where, if I get into heated debates, and I try not to these days, I like to listen. But just with the lager thing, I'll just get this beer out, and
I bet it's good with cheese.
You've got antipasti.
And
cold meat. Cheese.
I think like sharp cheddar would be really nice. That smoke and sweetness with the cheddar. And then, I mean, I guess seafood as well would probably be pretty good if you got the sort of smokiness and
End barbecue. If you burnt ends in this would be outstanding.
I mean, it's delicious as it is, but I think as a food beer, it would be really interesting. Yeah.
And even it's quite divisive. A lot of people don't like it on its own, but there is still always an intrigue of, I didn't know a beer could taste like this.
Yeah. Fascinating. Really interesting. I must say, like, on the face of it, I don't think, like, the idea of a smoked beer doesn't really appeal to me that much. I think because I tend to think of beer as being something refreshing, and smoke I think it's hard to do that. But that is actually pretty good. I don't think I'd drink loads of it.
No.
But as a food beer, I think that's sort of liquids that really need sort of championing, because I think for that sort of application, it opens up lots and lots of opportunity to do really cool stuff that, unless the smoked wine's out there, wine can't achieve.
There you go. The converse already. But I never thought about that. No smoked wines, not oaky wines. But I think even though it's dark and it's quite intimidating in aroma, there still is that refreshing element. Obviously, it's cold, and it's got the roasted bitterness that you don't have from that really hoppy bitterness. You expect it to be slightly more rambunctious or aggressive than it is. It's actually, but worse than its bite. But then it is the intrigue. I wouldn't necessarily have a pint on it.
But I think I'm trying to think. Maybe I have had some like sort of smoky porters and that sort of thing, because they're around, aren't they?
Yeah.
But with that, I think probably they've been a bit more heavier going. But also, the other thing is this temperature. It's really nice and cold. So it keeps it a little bit fresh and lively and elegant. It doesn't get too kind of bogged down in kind of like weight and smoke and sort of coffiness and all that sort of stuff. It's weird. Without the smoke, I think it would be quite a kind of crisp, fresh lager, you know? And so that balance between the two works really well.
And I suppose without the smoke, you have got the roasted bitterness that feels different from hop bitterness. It's like that semi-porter type of thing.
Yeah.
It's a lovely bitterness, but it's not like loads of residual sugar. It's like stouts. Stouts, well, not all stouts are heavy. They just look heavy.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas, if we think of bitterness, a lot of your New World Pale Ales that are like 40 IBU, International Bitterness Units, a lot of the stouts are like 20. And they just look intimidating. And they're not. If you try them side by side, there's richness in a lot of these pale ales, sessionable pale ales, that actually, in physical chemistry, are much more intense than any stout, really.
It always amazes me that we have something called an International Bitterness Unit. Like someone at some point thought, look, we're going to have to regulate this damn thing. You know, it's just not...
Or monitor it.
Not regulate. But, be able to check it. Like, that is crazy, but it's sort of also essential when it comes to beer, right? That you've got some way of calibrating with my beer versus your beer, or this production versus that one.
Yeah.
So for consistency or comparison.
Consistency and comparison. Consistency is probably the biggest one that what our brewers run to, is making sure you got a target. So that's the consistency piece. In new product development, do it with comparison of, if you want to brew a certain style of beer, what's physical chemistry of a competitive set. With any gauge, then there's people that will maximize, I brew beer to 40, 50, 60. This is like 80 IBUs. Actually, I think physically we can't sense anything above 50.
As a ceiling for perception.
Yeah.
It's like peated whiskey, right? People love to go like, this one's 850 ppm, which would be very, very peaty.
Yeah.
You've always got some jerk who's trying to like, reach the sort of absolute maximum.
Exactly.
This is a sort of showcase.
I can be higher. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is high and what is medium, what is low for IBUs?
I'd say low would be 10.
Okay.
Then high is your 40s, 50s.
Mm-hmm.
So think of some of your double dry hopped IPAs, that's your 50s. And if you think of some of your core lagers, that can be as low as 10.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Good. Because there's a lot of you do see it in, I guess, sort of beer reviews and stuff like that mentioned now, don't you? Do you see it on bottles as well? Do people actually put that as part of their...
Yeah, there's a lot of people who put IBUs on bottles. And again, it will fall into the pale ales, the IPAs. A lot of brewers will use that as their standard, I suppose, metrics as well, whether it's a slider, whether it's a volume. If you think of your arbitrary unit of your Nando's chili, sometimes they'll do it in that respect as well.
Okay.
But again, these are all standards within individuals versus an industry standard that I think industry is fine out for.
We'll get back to the show shortly, but first I wanted to give a shout out to our sponsor, Fever-Tree. Fever-Tree have been my mixer of choice for more than a decade now, going right back to when I used them as our mixer at 15 in Cornwall in 2005. It's a very long time ago. This is a brand, of course, that made its name with tonic water, but to be honest with you, the thing that's going to be most excited at the moment is their range of ginger mixers. They have ginger beer, ginger ale, and then this product here, which is possibly my favorite in the entire range. Fever-Tree Spiced Orange Ginger Ale. The product starts out just like their normal ginger ale, flavored with 3 unique gingers that harmoniously come together for a nice citric, zesty, but also subtly spicy ginger effect. Then 2 more ingredients are added. Cinnamon for a nice baking spice hum, and then fresh clementine, which really extends that citric flavor and adds weight and body to this ginger ale. I would happily drink this stuff on its own, but of course it's a mixer, and it's best served with a nice whiskey, extending out into a highball and adding some real length and depth to it. Don't be fooled by the name. It's spiced orange. It might sound like it's a wintry ingredient, but actually it works brilliantly in summer highballs. And since we're approaching that period now, now's the time to crack it out.
Should we talk a little bit about cask ale?
Yes.
So
Perfect segue.
there you go. You've even got a cask here.
A mini
cask
ale here.
So this feels like quite a British thing, cask ale.
Very much so.
Yeah. Why? How did we end up doing this? Why did we end up doing it, like putting this stuff into cask, and what difference does it make to the final product? And why is no one else doing it?
I don't know. When? I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking hundreds and hundreds of years. And like I said, I'll probably study other beers more than I have done cask. I think the main difference is it's not pasteurized, it's not pressurized. It comes from a bellied container. Like if you think of a cask in a cellar, the yeast is still in there, it's settled. I do have a spitting actually, Tristan.
I'll just rinse them with the smokiness out, because we're going to affect the doom bar.
Where was I? Yeah, the container itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, the yeast is in there. And I think this is, we've always had that. Heaters coming in say, doom bar's different in a bowl. Yep. Yeah, it will be. It's in clear glass. It's got to be filtered. It's got to be pasteurized. Cask is not. And cask is a food stuff.
Yeah. It's like fresh ingredients in compared to sort of canned, I guess, right? Or jarred, you know.
Natural CO2.
Yeah.
And this is what's beautiful about it. It's still living. And when oxygen gets to that beer, we've got to drink it in 3 days. In comes the inherent challenge of, especially in the on-trade now, it's, you know, the skill set's not there, the training's not there, because people don't have time or budget to go, what do I have to do with this thing that is not plug and play in a cellar? That's an element of convenience in life, society. That's a whole different world.
Yeah, I mean, the number of, it used to be the case that, I guess the sort of pub was the classic place where you find cask ales, and now you look at the beer fonts and a lot of pubs, and cask has lost a lot of ground, hasn't it, in recent years?
Yeah.
And it's quite amazing, actually, and we're kind of lucky in Cornwall, I guess, because we still have quite a few places like this, when you walk in and see a line of actual beer pumps that require manual operation in order to pump this liquid out of a cellar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's with that and the lovely smile on your face when you talk about that beer engine. But then there's a lot of the population that's an immediate detractor of the stigma attached to cask ale. It's like lagers, cold and fizzy, ales warm and flat.
Yeah.
Because they have either the most positive or the most negative experience with it.
Yeah.
Or there's a little bit of green shoots at the moment, looking at some data, that the retro thing, again, can't help but sort of go into society. What your granddad drank is actually cool now.
Yeah, what your parents drink.
I think it was on one of your podcasts, wasn't it?
I do occasionally use that one. Yeah. It's not cool to drink with your parents' drink. It's cool to drink with your grandparents' drink.
Exactly.
Yeah. And of course, cask ale is kind of that for the sort of 20, 30-something year old, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who, 20-year-old, mid-20s, your parents very likely drank lager, or possibly Guinness, I guess. And your grandparents drank cask ale.
Yeah.
That's cool that might be coming back. God, it would be great to sort of see it take back some real estate in pubs.
100%.
And the training that goes with it,
The training, the care and attention, again, taking the leaf out of your guys' book of the education, because as much as that handful, like I said, you were excited about it, that's a massive detractor for a lot of people. That's what old people drink. But also, it doesn't have to be in a beer engine. Doesn't have to be in that bar furniture, because also if we think of those handfuls, sometimes they're very dark, quite muted colors. I mean, we've just gone through a new VBI change, a brand change. And a big thing is, ironically, at Sharps, if you look at the old pump clips, we had Bill Sharps' family crest on there. And it looked like the brewery was 150 years old. And even with the newest iteration of Sharps is fascinating, because it came from a lot of research, but then I spent a lot of time walking into pubs and sort of seeing how Cask has declined, and they're asking, how old is Sharps? And people going, 250 years old, 150 years old. And I was like, oh, well, this is quite interesting. What makes you think that? Well, again, ubiquitous nature of Doom. Surely it's as old as Greek King or Fuller's. Or St Austell, locally, St Austell's hits, 150 years old. We're millennials. Lagunitas is older than us, and that's considered craft. And it's fascinating, because you guys are craft. There's an element of independence, but also behavioural and style, because we brought out Solar Wade a couple of years ago. There was a lot of, you guys should really be doing that, because of the age perception. Again, sorry, you went on tangent. Cask, and actually the big thing with Solar Wave as well, it didn't need settling. So we used the point of it's a hazy pale ale, but we're also fronting into the fact of the skill set isn't necessarily there in hospitality, in front house.
So that was a cask ale.
Cask ale.
Yeah. You're still doing it?
It's come back this summer.
Right, okay.
So it's going to be a seasonal, which actually is a lovely link into bar furniture. One of our biggest accounts for Solar Wave, because we also did a trial of pouring it from a font through a keg font, was Box Park Shoreditch. And people would go,
you don't get much more sort of craft than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's that is that bar furniture piece.
Yeah.
And sold really, really well, as much as it sold down the Mariners that is traditional bar furniture.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we used to, I think at Surfside we had Cask put through a draft, through like a tap rather than because it just sort of didn't really fit the premise. You know, I mean, for starters, the bar, you're facing away from people, so you don't really want to be stood there kind of facing away from someone pulling this big lever. I mean, for some people, bear in mind that 50%, if not 60% of people listening to this do not live in the UK. It might be worth just sort of drilling down to exactly what we're talking about here. And we're talking about beer taps.
Good point. Just doing this a lot. It's like punching the air. So cask, keystone, shive put in. Once it's filled, there's an element of sediment in there. When you put it in the cellar, you need to leave it between 8 and 24 hours. Some people will say, for the sediment to settle.
And this is basically it's yeast, but you've got finings in there as well, right?
I suppose there's particles of all the natural ingredients that have been put in through the brewing process. So there's hops, there's malt, and just need settling time.
Yeah.
But then don't disturb it afterwards.
Yeah. Why can't you just filter that more rather than have the stuff in there? Is that not
I could, but it also preserves flavour.
Okay.
Because that's when you get into, if you filter it, pasteurize it, again, you're removing flavour. Back to that bottle cask analogy. Kegs, mainly filtered, pasteurised. Some are not filtered and pasteurised these days. And bottle, can, filtered, pasteurised. So, yeah, at any bottle versus cask, they're going to be different liquids. I think you probably told me years ago, like as soon as you put CO2, force CO2 in something, CO2 in itself is acidic. So therefore the flavour is going to change.
So an unfiltered, unpasteurised keg, that still wouldn't be a cask ale.
No, because it's still got top pressure of CO2 or a gas.
Okay, got you.
Pushes it through.
Sure.
Whereas oxygen, you tap a cask, and then oxygen, as soon as oxygen hits a cask, it starts degrading, and that is oxygen temperature at a cask's not best place.
Okay.
And that's why 3-day rule we preach by, and we should do as an industry, not just as a brewery. And I think what's happened in big decline in cask ale, full stop. There are green shoots in certain traditional styles of beer, and traditional, I think Sea Fury's having a bit of resurgence, which is a best bitter. Timmy Taylor's smashing at the moment. Harvey Sussex Becks are doing really well. And no one saw that coming. A bit like the Guinness book. Not saw that come. Like, that's abnormal.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, but we're seeing some green shoots in traditional cask ale. And I'm lucky, being part of the guild, that sort of the advisor group of the part of the guild, but also the Cask Matters group, which is, again, pretty humbling for me to sit round the table with Cask Mark, the guys from Adnams, St. Austell, Camera, Seba. It's all the people that have worked in silos rather than working together for cask ale. And now I think I can't remember the guy's name. I think it's from the Craft Beer Channel. They're trying to put through, I think we've signed enough through a petition to make cask protected through UNESCO, which is very exciting. It's a big deal because it's not like doing a cheese that's from a town, because it is a nation. But sort of leading to that question you asked me before, there are things in motion to hopefully put cask back on the pedestal it deserves to be on, in my slightly biased, but
yeah. Are there any other countries that do it?
No, not really. I mean, New Zealand does a little bit of cask.
Okay.
I think there's probably home cask brewers all over the world, but this is our national drink.
Yeah.
We don't really have a national drink as a nation.
No. Well, Scotland's got whiskey. I mean, I suppose, we don't. And if it's anything, then it's beer. And if it's beer, then it really ought to be cask beer, I suppose. Yeah.
Because it's steeped in history.
Yeah.
Burton was the brewing capital of the world at one point.
Yeah.
Probably one of the most influential towns in the world. And we don't romanticize. And so that's the other part of my job. I need to romanticize about beer.
Is it the water from Burton that kind of made it?
Gypsum. Yeah. Through the water. But that being the Midlands, logistically really good. And the first IPAs, see again, days of colonialism, that over-hop beers went from the Midlands over to India, and they only made it because they were stronger in alcohol and higher bitterness units.
So that preserves it better. Yeah.
Happy.
Yeah.
Preserved being hops and alcohol.
Okay. What type of beer, besides being a cask ale, is Dunbar, which we've just tried?
Amber ale.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Colour's an interesting one as well. I think being in the industry for a while, we're sort of obsessed with pigeonholes as well. Because I suppose a lot of the beers 150, 200 years ago would be the same colour as Dunbar, but Dunbar's quite pale. But then perception versus lager, it's quite dark. Special or Sea Fury won World's Best Pale Ale twice, and that's slightly darker than Dunbar, but it's because of that arbitrary unit of EBCs. Yeah, that's the colouring.
Oh, that's a colouring. So like IBC.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So IBC is International Bitter. No, IBU is International Bitter Unit, and EBC is another acronym.
Another acronym that people use regularly.
Which has flashed up on the screen right now. Sorry if you're listening to the audio version.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we've talked about. You just mentioned IPA, which it really feels like it's been the poster child for beer for like the last 10 plus years, right?
Yeah, and it's various iterations.
I can remember a time when IPA was not held in such sort of high esteem. It was just a kind of category. It was there, but it wasn't like this kind of like default order, which it now is. I mean, I was at a bar in Scotland this week, and I went to the bar, and the bartender said, "What would you like?" I was like, "I like a beer. What have you got?" And he went, "IPA?" And I went, "Yeah." And it was like, it's just sort of, he went with what I probably was going to order, because that's what probably a lot of other people order. And it turns out I was quite happy with that, and so I ordered it.
Yeah.
You know? Why do you think that's happened with IPA?
It's this craft movement. And as I said, we're super divisive, because it's something that we should own. Like, we created it, but Wellington White Shield is not a lot of the American iterations of IPAs that are really pale and really bitter. Like, Wellington White Shield just have this wonderful sort of British malty backbone, and some of them do. But even the definition of IPA has become slightly blurred. There's 3.4% IPAs, and there's the double dry hop imperial IPAs at sort of the 13%. And that's where it's all a little bit blurred. I mean, this is why I like going to judging competitions, because there'll be a imperial IPA category. So that's what that can be. Or a traditional British IPA category. So I can put that in that box.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what happened, I guess there seemed to be a kind of movement towards hoppiness that started with the craft brewing thing. And of course, IPA was a great style with which to sort of showcase that, because it was traditionally more hop.
Yeah.
And then I guess what happens is, you know, someone's put some more hops in there because hoppiness is nice. I still want to call it an IPA because IPAs sell.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing just kind of like dominoes from there.
And there are no rules.
Yeah, there's no rules. Yeah. So you can kind of do whatever you want. And I'm still going to call it IPA because that's what people order.
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you've got this dramatic shit. I mean, London Dry Gin kind of had the same thing. Again, not really, there are rules, but they're not many and not very well policed. You know, it has to be Juniper Ford, and certainly that one's not been policed very well. But it's the same sort of thing, you know, and also, you know, a sort of, it's something that is British as well.
Yeah.
And you end up with all sorts of products that don't really taste like gin at all, and yet they call themselves London Dry Gin because people like to order London Dry Gin, or they like that sort of assurance that London is on the bottle.
Yeah.
You know, when you're drinking a Argentinian gin in Mexico. So yeah.
Because it's that association.
Yeah.
Of, you know, that Geneva to gin.
Yeah.
The pride, the heritage, and provenance. And I think there's just been a bit of lost provenance especially in the beer world. But also there's been incredible amount of enthusiasm, which is great. And this is what I mean, it's super divisive. I can't be just negative about craft because we might not be here without it.
Yeah.
It's been an incredible vehicle, an Americanism that we've adopted maybe we've adopted too much.
Yeah, sure. Right, so we've got another beer.
This is Salt Huckerback. As we chatted about IPAs and craft, so this is exactly that.
Okay.
Uber hop forward, hazy, unfiltered, fruity, juicy. And this is the lovely thing about craft. It brings a different world into perspective.
I mean, it smells exactly like craft beer in 2025.
Yeah. Then that's the pigeonhole in itself.
Yeah, I mean, it's got that slight sort of tropical note, certainly citrusy, but pretty light, other than that sort of aromatic. You know, not much in the way of maltiness to it at all.
But a little bit of biscuity malt, but the hops dominate the aroma.
And I think probably the strongest beer we've tried so far as well, right?
I think
5.5 it is.
It is the strongest beer.
It's good though, it's nice.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, I personally, I like that hoppiness up to a point. And then by the time I get to the third beer, or fourth beer, I think I'm pretty much done with it, you know?
Hard work. Yeah, it can be hard work. And I think this is the other thing. And again, a little bit of the history had alluded to sort of German brewmasters travelled the world in the mid-1800s. For whatever reason they did, they travelled the world. That's why lagers drank everywhere in the world. The Bavarians travelled, the Bohemians didn't. The Czechs didn't do that much travelling. The Germans did. That's why we have the Coors, the Budweisers, the Sing, Cobra was a German brewmaster. Like all of these that is all based on that German Helles style. And then Prohibition in the States. I talked to you about Prohibition. You're probably talking about Prohibition and stuff about vodka in this building all those years.
Yeah.
The banning of alcohol. Again, paraphrase, don't shoot me down.
No.
But the savvy business people, there were 2,000 breweries in the States, pre-Prohibition. Post-Prohibition, there were 7. They were geared up. They diversified for 13 years. Porcelain, soft drinks, malt drinks, to keep the cogs going. And when whichever amendment was amended, because it's an amendment, when it was lifted, they were ready. Their breweries were full. They built train tracks because of that German ingenuity and that business prowess. That's why lagers are drunk all over the world. But with that, when you're drinking what has seemed to be quite bland, it's not. It's light. And then Sierra Nevada come out. Hops. Craft.
I mean, that was that like the first craft beer, do you think? I mean, obviously, like, it depends how you define it, because you go back far enough and everything's kind of craft. Like, Belgian breweries are craft breweries, right?
Exactly.
But of the sort of modern...
Craft,
sure.
Craft before craft.
But if we're using craft, if we're defining craft as sort of modern, an American influenced craft, then that's how the first one...
I would say Sierra Nevada, because I think, and again, happy to be corrected, because I think that was sort of late 70s.
I think it's 70s, yeah. Yeah, that must be like 50 years.
Yeah, and if you think, when did Prohibition stop? 1933?
Yeah.
That's 50 years of German lagers everywhere, ultimately.
Yeah.
And then someone goes, it's like listen to, I don't know, Boyzone for 30 years, and then Jimi Hendrix pops up. It's like, wow! That is my ridiculous musical analogy.
Well, that's a good one. I like that, Tristan.
But that's what the guys in America went through. We didn't go through that. Germany didn't go through that. Belgium didn't go through that.
I liked your point of history of the sort of lager expansionism, but not so much in the UK, right? We kind of held out on the sort of low strength bitters cask for quite some time, right?
Yeah, sort of 70s.
Yeah, which is quite amazing. I mean, obviously, there's big taste and changes in taste in the 70s in the UK. You know, you had the sweet German wines coming in, the sort of ciders and perries and baby sham. You had, spirits were changing as well. We were shifting from whiskey to lighter spirits. There's a lot going on then as well. And in the beer space as well, seemingly. I mean, in general, I guess you would say it's a sort of shift towards lightness and away from that sort of, I'm not trying to categorize all cask ales as heavy, but they are heavier on the whole, you know?
Yeah, or, again, whether it was down to people's cellars, could have been warmer, could have been flatter. Cask Gale breweries might have got complacent. The standard of beer wasn't very high.
Yeah.
A lot of people do get complacent in business where they get good. And then, I don't know, again, culturally, don't know if there's anything anti-lager, but when lager happened, it went boom. You know, and then actually thinking about these, you know, as Brits, when we adopt something, we adopt it hard.
Oh, yeah.
Like we see the gin boom, we see the rum boom coming, maybe the whiskey boom. Again, maybe just listen to your podcast, we can be consistent.
Yeah.
But when we adopt things, we adopt it hard and then forget
Yeah.
what's come before or where it's come from. We look at it as new.
Yeah.
It's not new. You know, it just has a different story.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. Yeah. Now, again, so when we did start adopting lagers, was it sort of, do you think it was more like the kind of American, like Budweiser, Coors, obviously, I think again, they have German origins, or was it more European?
I think it was more the Holston Bills.
Yeah.
It's slightly before my time. Even
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Tuck paper out. But Hofmeister and that sort of thing. And that's where the brands would come in. But then we look at what's happened to certain lagers. I mean, Belgium, there's a trip to Belgium that blew my mind. That was my beer epiphany. But then Stella has gone through, as a brand, has gone through really tough times.
Yeah.
Carlsberg Special Brew has a completely different image, even though it was a gift from Danish royalty to Winston Churchill. It should be the champagne of the beer world.
That was Miller High Life.
Yeah.
The champagne of beers. Yeah.
Special brew, but it's strong lager. Back to the conditioning of don't drink strong beers in high quantities.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't always end well.
Yeah, well, that was the Stella thing was interesting. I know it's slightly stronger than, I mean, you know, a lot of these beers are a little bit stronger than, I guess, the beers that people would have been used to in the sort of 50s and 60s. But what is Stella, like 5 point?
It used to be 5.2%.
Right. So what's that, like 0.5% stronger than kind of the other stuff people were drinking? You're gonna you need to drink a lot more of that, like 50% more than X other lager for the alcohol to really start playing a factor into that. It feels more like
behavior.
It's just cultural. Like the people who were drinking that brand were the same people that were getting into lots of mischief.
Well, exactly that, and I think that's what's really unfortunate about it, because it's still the second most drunk beer in Belgium.
And it's a tasty beer.
It's a great beer. Yeah. And I think, but it's managed to give the non-lager drinkers some ammo to go, well, lager's for the chemicals because people behave differently. It's like, it's a little bit scapegoatery.
Yeah, we have lager lout as well as the sort of meme, isn't it, as well? I mean, I haven't heard anyone say that for a while, but it certainly used to be a big thing.
Yeah.
It was just association of the type of person that drinks it.
Yeah.
But I think probably actually that's something that has changed a little bit, and I think craft beer's probably helped with that rebranding lager. And I emphasize rebranding, in that, you know, there's still some delicious older brand lagers out there that are amazing, but I think by introducing it and using new words, well, not new words, but new words to most people like Helles and stuff like that, it's sort of helpful to kind of, you know, establish a new framing of the category.
Yeah, and I think this is why I love my job, when I get to chat about it. But again, taking the leaf out of your book, I will stop stroking your ego.
I hope to cut it out.
And that sort of Bruce Lee and think what you think. Just do a blind tasting, people.
Yeah.
Remove a brand or put it in black glass. And this is why I genuinely love my job. I get to talk to people about stuff, because there you have some adamant, I don't drink lager or I don't drink ale. They tried Wolf Rock for the first time. Amazing. That's this flavor, this flavor, this flavor, because it's in a wine glass, in a black wine glass. There is no brand, or I don't like IPAs. They can't see the color of it. I think that's the fun stuff.
Yeah, for sure. No, I totally agree. Taking branding away and even categorization away and saying, look, objectively, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
What do you taste? It's always surprising, even to people that know what they're talking about and are very experienced in these things. It's always very disarming to have, you know, a lot of the clues taken away from you, and then you have to actually just think on your feet and go, what?
Is this good? Do I like this? Yeah, and it goes from objective to subjective, and that's where it's a conversation, not a dictatorship. Yeah, I can tell people what beers won loads of awards or what my favourite is. That's why I always asked. I used to interview people in this room when I worked at St. Herdog, and it was, what's your favourite film? What's your favourite band or artist? One bit of a cinephile I am, and I love music. But also, I need to find common ground. You've worked in this industry. Find common ground with your team quickly. That's cool, because we can get on, because your shift starts in 5 minutes and we can spend 12 hours together.
Do you think you can tell a lot about a person from the beer they drink?
I'll ask them why they drink it. But then I've got this, you must get it quite regularly as well. If I'm going out for a pint, I go out for a pint and have a drink. But then I've realised in my, I suppose, my quite humble nature, that all eyes are on me going, "Are you drinking?
Yeah.
What should I drink that?" So you can drink whatever you like. I will drink that because I know it's going to be good and consistent. There's no judgment. I just want the pint. I just want to pint the beer. I'm not always in analysis mode.
Yeah, sure. I'm exactly the same with the stuff that I consume as well. I mean, one of my best friends, Jake, who was on the podcast recently, he only ever drinks basically the sort of lightest, cleanest lager he can get his hands on. I mean, I'd go as far as to say blandest lager he can get his hands on. I think it's partly because he treats it a bit like hydration alongside spirits and cocktails.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't want too much static and confusion going on with the flavour of this product, because he's also got a whiskey and a cocktail or a martini on the go.
But also, I don't know the chap, but it's one of those things of, because he's so knowledgeable about everything else, do you have the capacity or do you have the want to go down the beer rabbit warren? And so I've confessed in the past, I'm not a brewer, and I'll always use that, one, as a caveat for my knowledge, but two, I studied sound engineering and it ruined music for me. Like, it's the best thing about music, but I cannot have music on in the background without going, how have they recorded that? Or, as that sort of semi-musician. And so that's why I don't want to be a brewer.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely think it will ruin the magic for me.
Yeah.
Of I'll have it in this form.
Yeah, well, I think just as being a sort of beer sommelier, appreciator, educator, you get to sort of live the magic trick every single day without peeking behind the curtain to see how it all works, and then it becoming a sort of game of like mathematics and this supplier and that quantity and this temperature.
Yeah.
Because then, your appreciation of the end product might end up getting somehow denatured or even just sort of diminished by this sort of the sort of hardness of a production.
Yeah, and KPIs, and you get a massive respect for brewers. Let's get another.
Yeah. Let's go down.
The wheat.
Okay.
Belgian wheat style. I've seen so many brewers that really beat themselves up if they are not happy with the product. We're going to try a beer that's got some age on it. That I love this beer. This is back to 2011. We don't sell it because it's best before. Not it's used by, but it's best before. Was 4 years after it was brewed.
Mm-hmm.
Maximum. And this is a lot older than that. I think it's tasting fantastic. There's nothing can do anyone any harm.
That's not this beer.
That's not the one. No.
Okay, so it's not 14-year-old Blue Moon.
No, exactly. Vintage Blue Moon.
Blue Cheese Moon.
Blue Cheese Moon. That's a good one. You should be in marketing. But I think that's the thing. I've seen so many brewers that it must taste like this. If it changes, that's too old, I must brew a fresh one. That's the way they're conditioned or told to be. Whereas I like the fact the spirit's well and the wine well will watch something develop and change. Just because it's oxidized, it hasn't gone bad. It's just changed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my perspective.
Yeah. I think, again, these things it does come down to a value judgment in the end. Do I still like it? Is it sort of within that window of this is enjoyable and tasty and I'm happy to pay for it and I happily have some more of it?
Yeah.
Any change, as long as it fits within that parameter, I think is okay.
Yeah.
It's when, it's changed and you're like, yeah, but actually there's this off now, or there's something I don't like about it, or it's not really drinkable anymore. To be fair, it could have all of that and still be kind of interesting, but maybe not a product that you want to kind of spend money on.
No. And I've got some beers, I didn't bring them today, that haven't aged as well. But even, the guys at Fuller's do it really well. They have their vintage evening. They'll bring out a lot of the different vintages. And I like that because there's that pride and romanticism. Whereas in the consumer world, it is numbers, it's hectolitres, it's listings, it's all very transactional versus romantic. And when you're having a background in front of house, I know that consumers, in this hotel or in a cocktail bar, if there's time to chat, they'll want a chat. And especially with people's thirst for knowledge, they like the stories as well. And as long as they're real stories, not fabricated stories, because anyone can Google anything, or any other search engine you buy, that give them a little bit of want of information and a want to learn a little bit more. And that's the empowering exercise, hopefully. Yeah. And beer's been so complacent in selling numbers, it's not collectively puts best foot forward on, let's see if we can do what the whiskey guys are doing, the gin guys are doing, the wine guys have been doing for hundreds of years.
Yeah, that's it. And I guess it's still fairly on in that journey for beer, it feels like for me. It's early in spirits and wine as well. Wine's really had a slight head start because it's had, it's been televised. It's sort of appreciation of wine for 50 odd years now, I would guess, and written about for much longer.
And known about in high society.
Well, that helps because there's a class thing to it as well, that's for sure. And spirits too, the same, appreciated by people with cash to spend. And, we've had whiskey books knocking around for decades and decades. With beer, it feels like a newer thing. And, going back to sort of stigma, for so long, it's been associated with the kind of rotund bartender. It's certainly in the UK, this is, and probably in a lot of other countries, European nations as well. The guy polishing the dirty, greasy glass behind the bar with a whole load of beer taps in front of him. Not a lot to say about the products other than it's sort of maybe cold. This country probably not that cold.
Yeah.
And mildly carbonated, and we've got different colours. That's kind of it. And then we had lager, which the more we talk about it, I'm more like, God, this should have been this sort of like cultural moment of celebration. Like we've got these imported, markedly different kind of products coming in, and yet so quickly it's sort of descended to a class thing, and now with craft beer coming around and people like yourselves and the guild and everything, it's now this great opportunity to be like, right, how do we kind of create protocols for how we talk about beer? How do we create this sort of start of the conversation for people, so that people think of it more than just like, oh, it's kind of barley, water and yeast and not a lot else besides. How do we start to demystify some of these names and start talking about different countries of origin and what that means to the beer style? How do we kind of demystify labeling of beer? How do we organize a beer in the supermarket? What's the journey to get to all of that without throwing confusing terms at people too early in the whole process? It's kind of exciting, I think.
I think it really is, and it's a beautiful summary, mate. Because I think this is, as I alluded to before, I went into full beer geek mode, reading all the blogs, all the nuanced details, but that was in my own mind. I realized the audience was other brewers and other beer writers. When it comes to audience and educators, from being so granular in detail, I got a bit of tunnel vision where I would only read the beer bloggers, the beer writers. Pete Brown's amazing. He's forgotten more about beer than I'll ever know, but he is the romantic writer. Urge anyone to buy his books. But then his books seem to be bought by beer enthusiasts versus beer drinkers.
Mm.
Oz Clarke's a household name, you know. Ollie Smith, legend. Saturday Kitchen, brilliant. That is the audience piece. And I realized I was listening and speaking to a lot of bloggers and brewers, but the audience was small. But then there was that moment of when I go to a festival, whether it's Taste of London, whatever it is, I'd have the stage and then ask people about beer. People are none the wiser. But they're also slightly embarrassed that they don't know anything about beer.
Yeah.
So flipping on its head and making it empowering as possible, giving them some information, and hopefully then they can lead up to buying one of Pete Brown's books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they can go on a proper journey.
Mm-hmm.
But actually we need to kickstart somewhere. Use that analogy when it comes to the supermarkets and signposts. The beer industry is so far behind. I realize we need to start from the beginning. Literally one step at a time, or a podcast at a time, whatever.
One podcast at a time. Yeah. This is where it starts.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully, this is a pretty industry-facing podcast, but I think one of the reasons I was excited to have you on is because in the world of spirits and cocktails, all these people will be serving beer. Every single one of them. And probably a lot of them do have a pretty good knowledge about the beer they're serving, because they would have read up on it because they're smart.
Or do they?
Well,
I think this is the big thing. Especially more, I suppose, more towards fine dining. When it comes to the mixologists, the cocktail people who generally have a better knowledge because they have the thirst for how everything's made.
Yes.
This is why I work with a lot of chefs.
Yeah.
Because I find there's quite a lot of barriers in front of house teams or buyers or sommeliers because they're focused on wine. Beer's the enemy.
Yeah. Well, also, especially with restaurants where you have a division between sommeliers and front of house. Mm-hmm. And then really what you have there is you have a kitchen with chefs who know their ingredients and their dishes. You have sommeliers who know their wine and their producers. And you have front of house that, sit somewhere else. They're not serving a product. They're serving someone else's product.
Yeah.
Right? And so often it's hard for them to have ownership over anything themselves. They're effectively a sort of vessel of information, but none of it coming from their domain exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why, especially in restaurant environments, it can be hard with beer and spirits, because there's... Yeah, well, no, I'm not talking about this sort of culturally within restaurants, they often play second fiddle to wine and food.
Or literally the back page of the menu.
Yeah. Or a different menu.
Or a different menu. In the drinks menu.
Yeah.
Wine list, leather-bound wine.
Exactly, yeah.
Drinks menu, back page.
Yeah.
You might have a bottle of Peroni, Moretti, and...
Yeah. I mean, some places, they might not even be listed beers, right? Yeah. It might be like, well, if someone must have a beer, then we've got some, but let's not advertise it.
Yeah, which, again, I don't mind. Yeah, it's different stroke for different folk. But again, that's why I love talking to chefs, because it's all about flavour. There isn't their GP target. Wet GP will be good because there might be some free stock in for the meal. But what I really buzz off is the experience of the consumer. Because I'm using the novelty of a beer pairing menu. How absurd. And I do go, that's really nice. It's that absurd to surprise to happy. And I suppose it's been a little bit of a journey. Just come back from Port Leavenworth. We did a grape versus grain night with Jude Carriara and the team at Kotakai. Mate, so much fun because it is audience participation. Everyone gets a tiny glass of wine, tiny glass of beer, and vote after every course what their favourite pairing is.
Who'd you have choosing the wine?
Had the guys, so it's been Katie from Nottingham for 2 years, and then the guys from Carl Bernadette from LWC.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So we would often do a chat, not between courses, we just do it once and well at the beginning, and then just ask everyone after each course, hold it up, grape or grain. Grape generally wins because people are happy with that. And not only that, it's Colbeck's some wicked wines as well.
Yeah, I'm also, especially when it's public vote like that, it's the safer one to go for. In a way, it's selecting personality type, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's like, are you willing to be the renegade and go against? Sorry, the pun doesn't work because it's go against the grain. But or are you gonna play it safe and go with wine? Because no one's gonna really criticize you for going with wine, apart from like, oh come on, like
Unless they really know the wine going well, that will.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you have the inverted wine snobbery.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Whereas with grain, you're putting your neck on the line a little bit, aren't you? Because the wine person can turn around and go, come on.
Yeah. It's until a grain works really well.
Yeah.
And then people get a little bit brave, or people go, I actually just preferred it.
Yeah.
Because it is that subjectivity of taste. What did the guys do? They did a monkfish dish, and it was a little bit tongue in cheek for me. Monkfish, there was a little bit of curry leaf. There's 100 covers, dude. And Ryan, Jude and the team smashed out 100 covers beautifully. And monkfish dish with a sauce, curry leaf. I paired it with Cobra.
Only Cobra, really?
Because ironically, and this is what I love Lord Billamore for it, Cobra and lager is the only generically accepted beer and food pairing. And that's been really hard work. Wow.
Yeah.
And that was down to that dude. Karen Billamore, past a hero of mine, again, basically went to every Indian restaurant where he set up Cobra. Savvy man, he set up Cobra because he couldn't really cook. And he would always dine out. He was like, right. Again, German brewmaster comes in, wants a lager but with finer bubbles because he loved the smoothness of ale and the freshness of lager. And then he's kept that strap line because that was how it was born. But it also went into every curry house. And then that expanded.
I'm racking my brains for another generally accepted food and beer pairing, and of course you'd know if there was one. And I can't think of one. That's wild, isn't it? Because that's a cultural meme, you know? It's like, I'm having an Indian, I'm going to have Cobra.
Yeah.
And yet there really are no others, not in this country anyway. Wow, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
We need more though, don't we? We need more.
Really more. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I used Cobra, and that was a winner in that round in Kotakai, which I loved because it was super clean, and also the monkfish was really delicate. The sauce was beautiful. And also I was at a good table as well. Had Peter Sanchez and Iglesias there, Josh Egleton, like Stefan Delorme. These are big hitting chefs. That they hadn't done a grape and grain like before. Stefan had. We did one on Lou last year, and that was a bit of a penny drop moment for them. And that was like, instant validation for beer.
Yeah.
And actually, my favourite drinks pairing that I've had, I told Tab and Sam at the brewery the other day, and Georgia was in Portland with me. Favourite drinks pairing that I've done was at that one. I'd done Bandero Cafe. It's the guy that set up Patron, sold Gardi, then set up Bandero, Copy Tequila. Did one part that, and then 3 parts Doom Bar. And Ryan and Jude team done a white matcha tea tiramisu. So a non-tiramisu, but when you had a sip of the Copy Tequila and Doom Bar, instant tiramisu. Like transformed to tiramisu. It's like, my smugometer went to 11 at that point, that night.
I think what I'd like to see more of is just drinks pairing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, this course is going to be best with wine. This course is going to be best with beer. This is going to be best with this cocktail. This is best with whiskey. Whatever it is.
Tea,
yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be alcohol either.
Yeah.
I think that's what we should be aiming for because, like a wine pairing is great. And there are, there's a good amount of diversity in wine. Beer pairing, fantastic. I mean, I've had from you and others some fantastic beer and food pairing. And that German one, the Smoky one, I have absolutely no doubt could work so well with food.
Yeah.
But what all that goes to show is that actually for each dish, there's, an ideal companion there. And it doesn't sit within one category of drink.
Yeah.
It sits across all categories.
Good. I'd like you to re-listen to your Jack Stein episode where he said wine's the best thing.
Yeah. Well, I think on that specifically, I was talking about cocktails, which have often forced into food pairing. And because I've done so many bloody cocktail food pairings before in the past that I've had to host and had to do, and had to sit through.
Yeah.
And for the most part, they're badly thought out. That I think, because pairing is not easy, especially so, I think, when you're actually starting from scratch, as you are with cocktails.
Yeah.
With with wine or with beer, you have a library of ingredients that are ready to go. You know, already library of tools that are ready to go. This beer or that, this wine or that. With cocktails, because you're starting from scratch, it grants the person who's creating the pairing far too much creative freedom. Yeah. And what usually happens is they end up making something that sort of tastes like the dish. And then you're like, well, I've just kind of got the same thing here, you know?
In liquid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they should be doing is thinking about the drink as a sort of component of the dish. So that it harmonizes with it rather than just sort of is it.
Yeah.
I've seen that so many times with cocktails. And I think the best way to actually do it, to go about doing it, is to say, right, what would be the best beer or best wine to pair with this? Now let's make a cocktail that is sort of similar to that.
Yeah.
And if we're really smart, then think about what the best wine or beer could be if it existed, you know, and then take that cocktail to that level.
Love it, mate.
But it's normally a disaster. So I think that's probably what I was saying. But it's just, I don't know why. I mean, I did say wine is the best, and I'm.
It's all subjective. It wasn't challenged.
Yeah, no, but wine's pretty good.
Wine is great. Wine's great, but it's not every wine for every
No.
dish. And
No.
You hit the nail on the head. It should be a drinks pairing. We should walk into a fine dining restaurant and have the tasting menu, and it's a drinks pairing. Yeah, like I'm fighting the corner for beer. Wine's done its job.
Sure, yeah. No one needs to fight that corner, do they?
Exactly.
And someone needs to fight the spirits corner, but I mean, spirits is tricky because, of course, they are strong. There's a lot.
The drink that I did. God, that's most least humble I've sounded for a long time. But that Bandera Doom Bar thing was easy, and it was one of the reasons I did it because we did it before with a chocolate brownie, but it's easy for front of house. 100 covers, you don't want to be shaking anything. It is 1 part, 2 part. That's my sort of front of house emphasis.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And because it worked really well, that again is the step further towards cocktail. Is it 2 or more ingredients that technically make it cocktail?
Yeah, 2 or more. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cocktail. I did a hop. And that's for 100 people to go. I would never think to put a coffee, tequila, or a beer together, let alone put it with a dish, a dessert.
Yeah.
That's the journey.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, we didn't talk about Blue Moon, so let's just briefly touch on that. So we were drinking that about 15 minutes ago.
Yes. Oh, the tangent. Blue Moon, Keith Beer did a doctorate in brewing, and he studied in the town of Hoegaarden. And that was where my beer epiphany happened. I was selling Hoegaarden Brass Monkey in Nottingham and got sent to Belgium, won a competition where you all got sent to Belgium. I over-ordered, basically. And was the Midlands champion.
I remember you going on that trip.
Yeah. And I came back. That's the...
Well, we used to drink Hoegaarden before then, didn't we?
Did.
We used to, it was always going way back, one of our favourite drinks.
Yeah.
Because it's got that, it's refreshing, you know, it's light and it's got that citrusy kind of thing going on, and the cloudiness is kind of cool. The glasses were like weapons.
Glass. yeah.
Drop that glass on your foot and you don't walk again, kind of thing.
Exactly. and that was it. And little did I know from drinking it, we were drinking Brass Monkey anyway, that was predominantly a cocktail bar. I loved that place. But we had Left on Tap, Hoegaarden on tap. I didn't know anything about beer.
It's one of the best cocktail bars in the country.
It was solid. And that was 4 deep. You learn to, and a lot of reminiscing listen to the podcast, but making a good mojito is hard. I've had
apparently so.
Yes. A lot of bad mojitos.
Yeah.
I've listened to that one before. That's why I went on one.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the classics. And this is the evolution of the cocktail. Yeah, the brown balls. Yeah. The daiquiris, like we were banging them lots out in the Saw Bar in Nottingham. Anyway, divert from beer, but it was a front of house piece, and then went to Belgium, and it was amazing. And yeah, as pedantic as I was as a youngster, 19, 20, in Hoegaarden, and everyone needs to be torn down or knocked down a peg or two. And my greatest one was in after the brewery tour at Hoegaarden. And I've got any questions after the tour with history of they've been brewing this beer in this town for a long time. And I was like, what's best, lemon or lime in the Hoegaarden? He said, we must be about in his 60s. He said, stand up, room full of peers, bar managers. He said, we've been trying to perfect the art of brewing the perfect white wheat beer with coriander, citrus, since I'm sure it's like the 1600s or the 1400s. And you put fucking fruits in it. And I was like, well, okay, yeah, got it.
Also,
Don't ask questions.
Also, you didn't answer my question.
And I was like, wow, yeah, it's a really good point. Never thought about that. And that's where I've got, not necessarily glossed over it, but that respect and romanticism, that's what I love about Belgium.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with not putting fruit in it. But again, working in brass, as a cocktail bar person, I wouldn't follow a recipe. I'd do the recipe, but I'd also ask the consumer or the punter how they like their daiquiri or how they like their mojito. Because all it takes is a little bit more gone, or a little bit more lime. And people would love that. Or when someone comes in, I don't know what to drink. What color do you like? And then you make them a bespoke cocktail because 90% of them, 6% of them drinks for sours, anyway, whether it's lemon or lime, whatever it be. And they're over the moon. And that's what I love hospitality industry, is making memories for people. Blue Moon, that's what.
Yeah, there you go.
So basically, Keith Veer, from the States, studied at the Hoegaarden, did his doctorate, loved Belgian wheat beers, so went back to the States and brewed the Belgian white. So that is Seville oranges, not lemon or lime, coriander. It is, again, paying homage to the Belgian wheat beer.
And so 100% wheat, or do they? So sometimes you have barley in the
Rolled oats and barley.
rolled oats and barley, right? And is the ratio of those a secret, or is it
No, I just don't know. I was a brewer. But yeah, got orange.
predominantly wheat? Would it be? Hoegaardens must be predominantly wheat,
I would say majority. It's a little bit like stouts. You still majority pale ale,
right?
and
It's like a seasoning kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And you always need the malt, right, for the enzymes
Yeah.
So
So tons of malt, and then probably kilograms of the heavily roasted stuff, or the oats in this case.
yeah,
And so from Blue Moon, Belgian inspired, to another Belgian inspired, Chalky Spike, and as we chatted about, Jack Stein.
yeah. And we've been talking a little bit about food pairing as well, so
Yeah.
it sort of makes sense to go to a beer that was a collab with a chef.
Yeah.
So Jack's lesser famous dad, Rick Stein.
Charlie's lesser famous brother.
Rick Stein. So this beer is like 20 years old now or more, maybe?
First brewed it in 2006, and my smugometer's quite high again with this one, because it's my favourite. I love Belgian beers. And it's been the unsung hero of the Sharps portfolio for a long time.
Well, I remember when it first came out, there weren't that many Sharps products. Like, it was quite revolutionary for the time. Because at the time you had like Doombar, Atlantic, Eden Ale, probably.
Yeah, special. Roland Coaster.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, and this was probably, the first beer in that size bottle that Sharps did. This is before anyone was reading cans, I guess. Had sort of, what do you call them? Core lagers.
Yes.
Core
lagers.
Yeah. So really, it was in a way like quite a leap.
It's a massive go.
Yeah.
But on a personal preference, Stewart was head brewer. Stewart loved Belgian beers. Stewart.
Yeah.
And so this was him again paying homage. But
we should just on the Stewart Howe note, just because we've mentioned him a few times.
Yeah.
And I know him as well, or knew him. So do you want to just mention he was the head brewer at Sharps for quite some time, right?
He probably started way before me. I started in 2009, so I think Stewart had been there 20 years. He's now working for the IBD now in Stewart Brewers and Distillers.
Right.
And he's literally rewriting playbooks for the Institute of Brewers and Distillers.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
I remember when I sort of used to spend time with him, it was, again, for me, of course, very eye-opening in terms of my beer learning. I used to be on the tasting panel for Sharps from about 2000, would it have been 2005?
To 2010?
Yeah, it was about 4 or 5 years. It took me to London in 2010, yeah.
Yeah.
So I would go into Sharps every week and taste that week's batches of Doombar. And this is quite telling because when I first started doing it, I think we used to taste 4 beers. That had been a sum total of everything they made that year in terms of batches. Because obviously, as we've kind of talked about, this is a natural product made from natural ingredients, and there's variation between each batch. We'd score it based on various taste parameters.
Trueness to type and personal preference.
Yes, you'd score, so everything would be trueness to type and personal preference. So you'd score bitterness, fruitiness, or esteriness. You score things like diacetyl as well. So like defects. And then it was really cool because what they do is they pay you in beer. So whichever beer you like the best that week, you get your own barrel to take home. But anyway, by the time I finished, there were so many beers to taste that we couldn't taste them all. So you had to split the group into 2. I think it was like 20 batches. This is by the time I finished, which is ages ago. 20 batches, and not only that, but the size of those brews have like quadrupled as well.
Yes.
So it was vastly, vastly more beer that was being produced.
Yes, I think at peak would brew about 1 million pints a week. Ironically, we still get people coming to the shop at the brewery saying, "You're not brewing anything here, are you?" No, there's about 80 people just acting. And we have empty lorries coming in and out to create the facade. But no, we can brew about 1 million pints a week. And then, it does, I said I wouldn't do many more, but I won't do any more after this. But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing without you. And I think, I've said this story in the past, non-publicly, but happy to publicly.
There's not that many people going to listen anyway.
But from this building, your gin tastings, your rum education, the vodka education from doing it at where we're sitting now, no one did it for beer. And then you were like, "Ed, you got Friday afternoons free?" "Yeah, I can make that free." And then you invite me up to tasting panel.
Yeah.
And then it was the challenge of making something consistent. That blew my mind as
well.
well.
Yeah. You just assume that these things just pop out of, you put the ingredients together and out it comes.
Yeah.
But the variance was remarkable. I mean, I think there's only 1 or 2 occasions in the 5 years I did it where it was agreed that this beer was not good enough to sell. Yeah. But and then there's obviously variation within yes, we can sell this, and some stuff's better than others, and probably more variation than most people realize.
Yeah.
But it's not very often that something badly went wrong.
But and also the practicalities. If something was slightly more hop forward and something was slightly more malt forward from a different tank or a different brew, then we had the time to then blend it to balance it out.
Yeah, sure.
Which is amazing. It's efficient. It's consistent. That was the good stuff. But that is the challenge of being a brewer.
Yeah. So is it the only one that I'm going to have a second pour of because it is really, really good and it's one of my favorites as well. So Chalky's Bite.
So that's lyrical about Chalky's Bite. It is my favorite beer of all time is Left Blonde because that was the one beer that changed my mind when on that trip to Belgium. Chalky's Bite, 6.8%. Again, probably thousands of tastings now with people over the years who go, "Oh, 6.8%. Okay, cool. It's not that strong."
It's half the strength of the wine you drink.
Exactly. But not only that, this is like, I believe, the second most decorated beer in World Beer Awards history.
Wow.
Like, it's 4 times world champion.
Is it?
To my knowledge, only Robinson's Old Tom has won more world's best in categories than Chalky's Bite.
So what you're saying is it's the most successful thing Rick Stein's ever done.
Seafood's done all right. Big Nathan's done all right. But I think this is, when I first started working in the shop, it was really interesting because, you've seen it, the polarization of Rick and Padstow, whereas in fact, you covered it in the podcast with Jack. A lot of us wouldn't be here without Rick. But Rick was here a big portion of it because he fell in love with John Betchman's teachings and writings and fell in love with the estuary and had a failed nightclub. And then Nathan walked through the door. But before that, Paul Ripley walked through the door. Yeah, we bumped into John Walton earlier on. John was in the same year review. The ecosystem is so close here and so important.
Yeah.
And without the Ricks, we probably wouldn't have this ecosystem that has been cultivated.
No, I mean, look, any chef, more or less in Cornwall, there are probably 1 or 2 exceptions of people who kind of moved in. I don't know if Adam Handling has any connection to Rick Stein or not, but
Tenuous link to Rick, I'm sure there will be.
would be. Yeah, I mean, anyone else, you can draw the lines back, I would say.
Paul said it's one of the, we're in Paul Ainsworth's hotel.
Yes.
And the reasons that Paul came to Padstow, and that boy's done all right.
Yeah, yeah. Which is ironic, because I know Rick, good chef, not like the greatest chef, but, obviously he's championed, Cornish seafood and Cornish culture and did it all at the right time and in the right place, and obviously with enough sort of openness that he could teach and inspire the next generation, who have now taught and inspired the generation after that.
Yes, yeah, the legacy of Rick. And then when Rick comes knocking on the door saying, "Do you want to brew a beer with us?" Commercially, you go in.
Did he knock on the door?
Yeah, he knocked on the door.
Did he?
Yeah, to Stewart, and that's where Stewart was brave. Sharps was up and coming. Yeah, Bill was doing a great job. Nick and Joe had bought the business at that point. Recently, it's just been listed in nearly 300 Waitrose stores.
Has it?
Which is amazing.
After all those years?
After all those years, yeah. Nearly 20 years of existence. And then Chalky's has finally made it. I think with taste changing. But also the magic are down here. We did some tastings with the buying team, and they fell in love with the beer. They see all the presentations in the world, but when someone tries it and likes it, they have a natural inclination to buy it thereafter.
Amazing. No, it's delicious. Really good.
Yeah.
Right. So what is this one?
Right. The Duchesse. The Duchesse de Bourgogne. So this is a Flanders red. The Burgundy. I think Mike Jackson called it the Burgundy of the beer world. So this is an ale.
It's dark.
It is dark. But yeah, pretty red. There's that hint of rose in the foam. So this is not technically a lambic, but this has an element of spontaneous fermentation, lactobacillus, because these are then is an ale, a red ale, then aged in massive oak furders, in massive oak barrels, that have natural bacterium in there. And this is crazy. And this is why I don't like leading a tasting, but because most people are listening, balsamic, oak, malt.
Yeah.
It's all that similar to the Rauchbier going, this is a beer, is it?
Definitely balsamic. Like slightly vinegary, but like not in a bad way, because there's also freshness there as well.
Red fruit, cherries. And there's no cherries in here. There's no fruit in here whatsoever. It is a red ale. And if there was a Venn diagram, I think I've said this previously, a Venn diagram between wine, beer, and cider. This is bullseye.
Yeah. And the smell. Well, wine, beer, cider, and high quality vinegar, I would say.
Yeah.
Is probably the Venn diagram.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like balsamic.
Wow. And there's still those medicinal yeasty aromas.
Whoa. Quite a lot of sweetness, along with that acidity as well. I mean, it's sort of like a sour cocktail.
Yeah.
Or a fizz.
Or a cough candy.
Yeah. It's like, if I was going to make this from a cocktail, I think I'd do it's a little bit of vinegar or a shrub. Probably something medicinal in there, because it's got slight medicinal in it, like lavender and maybe some honey. Then lemon juice, obviously some more sugar, and top it up with some soda water, and you're about at this beer.
Or you go like and put Benedictine in it.
Yeah.
Benedictine, honey. This is like monks. If there was a monk drink, God, Benedictine monks.
What do you pair that with food-wise?
Venison is amazing.
Yeah, I really like that. Gamey, yeah.
But again, I suppose the versatility, as I lay my proverbial gauntlet down once more to the wine world, dessert-wise, trifles. This works really well with chocolate, but then amazing with a cheese board, like a varied cheese board. Blue cheeses works really well. Fruit cheeses, it works really well. Smoked cheeses works really well.
Yeah, cheese beer.
But then you could go venison, beef, you could braise meat in it, big rich red meats, stews, but then you could go for carpaccio.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foods.
Yeah.
This beer can go with.
Yeah. Big sort of darker gamey meats. I'd say chocolate sounds good as well, because you're sort of down if you compare it to chocolate, you're almost sort of like Black Forest Gatto-y kind of territory.
Yeah.
It's got that dark red fruit thing going on, and sweetness and acidity, and then some dark chocolate. And I can certainly see it working with cheese as well.
Yeah. But I think what's lovely about beer and dessert pairing is it never has the residual sugar of a dessert wine. Like the general rule of thumb is match sweetness with sweetness with dessert wines. Beer takes you to a completely different place.
Yeah.
And I don't always have a sweet tooth, so I'm usually done by dessert course.
Yeah. This is quite sweet though. Like it's, I think it really needs food. As a sort of like interesting thing to try on its own, I think it's really nice. Certainly not, it's not like designed to be kind of like, well, can get my fifth. No. So, yeah.
My fifth responsible bite, though.
What is it, 6.2, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
6.2.
Yeah, 6.2, yeah. Really cool that, like, beautiful label as well.
Yeah.
The Duchesse of Burgundy. So it's Belgian, but the name is the Duchesse of Burgundy, right?
Yeah, because I believe historically it was the extension of the Burgundy ruler.
Okay.
That Flemish part of
Right, yeah.
Belgium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, yeah, you compare that to like back when we were on some Staropramen and all those years ago. It feels like.
And probably, well, I suppose that I don't know the way it was first brewed, but you're probably looking late 1800s.
Right now. Yeah. Some water in there. You got to watch the glass out for that.
Yes.
One. Yeah.
I say yes. This one's.
So what category does that fit under?
So I would say, it's a Flanders Red. It's probably a category in itself. So it verges between ale and lambic, but because it's got an element of spontaneous fermentation,
Yeah.
I'd say it's lambic.
Okay.
And then we go into true lambic. Boon de Geuze.
So, and is that barrel aged? Does that go into barrels?
So that is barrel aged. The Duchesse.
Yeah.
Or Duchesse. I'm not too sure about the Boon. So I'm guessing it probably is. It might be an element. So I think with Rodenbach Bon Cru and the Duchesse de Bourgogne, I think, so it's ale, but I'd say it leans into lambic.
Yeah.
Here we go, barrels. Yeah.
That's the Duchesse.
That's the Duchesse.
Yeah. So,
Whereas this is lambic through and through.
Okay.
I think the Duchesse is probably one part new beer, two parts aged beer. I'm not sure about the Oude de Geuze, but I will find out for you.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So less dark fruits, more sort of like fresh. Ooh.
This is farmyard.
Yeah, it's funky, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all the things.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a dirtiness there.
Yeah.
But actually slightly cheesy.
Butyric acid, isovaleric.
Yeah.
And I think this is the irony. This is why I love beer so much. Like it's not my favorite beer in the slightest, but it's one of those things that is the absolute opposite of the core lager. Like that is deliberately infected.
Yes.
Like it's deliberately off flavors are supposed to be in there when so many brewers try so hard to remove them.
Yeah.
Whereas this is respecting itself for the absolute opposite. It's a little bit like this natural wine thing that I don't know much about. And this is just beer. Yeah, the versatility of beer is massive.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that there's this sort of like fetish for natural wine, and yet these natural beers have been around for, they've been around for a very long time, and also available for a very long time, in this country even. And yet, strangely, there's this sort of resistance to it. I mean, it feels like the vast majority, I know it's changing a little bit, but Belgium is really the sort of stronghold of this, right?
The strongholders, especially when it comes to the variation, because they've got that mark of heritage as well. They've got, the majority of the Trappist beers.
Ooh. Sorry, I tasted it. For those listening, I just tasted it.
It was a double. Yeah.
I think it's because it's after the other one, the Duchesse, which was quite sweet and sour.
Rounded.
Whereas this is this is pretty dry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is dry, sour. It smells different from what it tastes, but there is it's also a tough juxtaposition with beer drinking because it's acidic.
Yes.
And we're not used to acidic in beer in general.
But from a food pairing point of view, this is great, right?
Exactly,
Because you've got
but wine does very
yeah, exactly, yeah. You've got acidity, this whole sort of palette of acidified beers that you can play with for the food pairing side of it, which is often very necessary for certain types of food, right?
Yeah. Or even you could probably Stefan did this barbecue hack where he boiled oysters in beer. Nothing else, just boil them beer, barbecue, flat side down, and they just pop open. And with that, they absorb a little bit of flavour. I think this beer could be brilliant because, or in a more marinière, it is that link between white wine and cider that could work really well. But
Yeah.
boiled beer.
Really good. So the dryness is quite gracing, but because it's quite dry, I could drink 2 or 3 of them, I think, quite happily. I mean, I like the acidity. I know some people think of it as an off note, and kind of, I guess it kind of is, especially if you're not expecting it or it's not intentional.
Yeah.
But I kind of love it, you know. I think it does, in some ways, bridge the gap between beer and wine for me.
Yeah.
Because it introduces that freshness and that acidity. Also, they tend to be a little bit closer to wine in strength as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's got the acidity, but hasn't got aggressive acidity that you'd expect in a wine because it is still malt.
Yes.
It hasn't got that middle palate that ends up being cloying.
Yeah.
It's actually quite clean if you were to put this next to a big aromatic white wine.
Yeah. Do these kind of beers tend to, from the hopping point of view? I mean, you know, it's a million miles away from a sort of New England IPA with all that sort of aromatic tropical hoppy, but there's still hops in there.
Yeah.
But they're not different types of hops, not so much of the hops kind of thing.
It's probably old world hops.
Yeah.
The hops are there to add bitterness, and that's the functionality, not the aroma.
Yeah.
Because actually the majority of the aroma comes from...
You're going to get that in the fermentation.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't need to be layering in tropical notes because we're going to make that shit.
Yeah. And I think we think of the, 2 or 3 of the beers that we've had. You had Salt Huckerback, and Salt's amazing. Salto Brewery that's named after textiles, everything to do with alpacas and wool. So every beer they have, and again, Titus Salt set up that factory. That is hops, all about the hops. Then if you think of yeast, Boon de Geuze, that lactic, spontaneous fermentation, then the malt, the Sarah showed with the Rauchbier.
Yeah.
That's 3. This is what I do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, cool. What have we got left?
Let's do one more.
Okay, one more. Is that enough?
I haven't had enough.
No, I mean, you're thinking I've had enough.
Right, one more, and we'll do this. Right, how's my maths, Tristan?
So interestingly, I actually brought a bottle of this that you're opening now for us to taste because I've been holding on to it for years, and I thought, well, I probably should bring something other than just live to cameras. And
Great
minds think alike because you brought the same bottle, and I'm super intrigued to tell this. This is kind of, I guess, the pièce de résistance of the tasting. Save it for last. So what have we got?
So we have, and I would say, and I've said Lep's my favourite beer of all time, because that was the first beer I fell in love with. I have lots of better beers than Lep since. And this is my all-time favourite beer, big hitter. So this is Quadruple Ale. So in 2011, I say we started, Stewart and the team started brewing what we call the Connoisseur's Choice. It's also really big for me in my career, and actually in this building as well, because Stewart was brewing in this little micro kit beers called St. Enoch Double and Massive Ale that I used to pour actually in the hotel when I was working with Mr. Outlaw with a cheese board.
Did you? For the beer pairing, stuff. You were doing it here when you worked here as front of house manager.
And the customer of Sharps. Because again, off sort of your teachings, it's give people an option. And when you force, and Nathan was keen on flavour as well. When you put that with a cheese.
This is Nathan Outlaw. I don't know if we mentioned this. This is Nathan Outlaw, as in acclaimed Michelin star chef.
Yeah. One of the best seafood chefs in the world.
Who used to be the resident chef at this hotel, no longer, but still obviously in Port Isaac, where he has a couple of fantastic restaurants. And he's still in London as well.
No, he's just for
As
Ivar.
far as it knows.
Star at New Road, star at Fish
Fish
Kitchen.
Kitchen.
He's got the guest house as well. Again, another hero. I'm very lucky. Also a bit of a testament to don't burn any bridges when you leave a job.
No.
To be able to have a sensible conversation with Nathan. It was near August Bank Holiday to be working for him.
And another Rick Stein alumni, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. He walked in by chance. Paul Ripley gave him the job. And now this hotel. So I worked here for 5 years, I think, pre-Nathan and with Nathan. And then Paul Ainsworth just bought the hotel as well.
Sure.
Which is amazing.
Yes. So back to the beer.
Yes.
So yeah, Massive and Standard Up Double were the first two, and they were sort of like the test candidates really for this. It felt like, you know.
100%.
Yeah.
So Massive Ale, this was going to be called Massive Ale. Portman Group are not keen.
Didn't like that.
Don't do big.
Don't do dicks, no.
So quadruple, and there's also doffing the cap to quadruple Trappist brewing. So 4 times the malt bill, 4 times hop bill, more ingredients.
Yeah, let's just run through that quickly. Just get doubles and triples.
Doubles, triples, and quadruples. It's not about alcohol. Generally, the alcohol's higher.
Yeah.
But it's double the malt bill, that twice the amount of ingredients or types of malt or hops.
Yeah.
And then you're intensifying what your brewer's wort will be.
Mm-hmm.
Generally has more sugar. If you've got high acting yeast in there, it's going to create more alcohol.
So generally you're going to get stronger flavour and probably a bit more alcohol as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So quadruple, needless to say. I mean, I when I first tried this, and of course it was released in 2011, and we're trying a bottle from 2011. So this is a 14-year vintage beer, which I'll get you to talk about in a second, just about aging beer. When I first tried it, I'd never even heard of quadruple. Like, I was familiar with Trappist beers, the Belgian monk beers. Is it 8 Trappist breweries or 6?
There's about 16 now.
Oh, is there?
We've got one in this country, Austria,
Oh, wow, I did not know this.
the Trap, Holland or Netherlands. I think there's a Trappist brewery in the States now as well. So it's to be defined Trappist, it's got to be brewed within the walls of an abbey.
Yeah. Well, they're not originally in Belgium, like 6 or 8 or
Most of them are in Belgium.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And I tried my way around all these sort of chimets and roqueforts and that sort of thing, and they do doubles and triples, but quadruple just seemed like it was kind of taking it to the next level.
But yes, I do have one.
It was like Gillette when they had another
another
blade to the race.
The quantum max. Again, it's paying homage. But I love this because as much as it's Trappist in style, there's a huge amount of Stewart going. Remember barley wines, people?
Yeah.
Not the gold label barley wines. This is like the Thomas Hardy barley.
Strong bastards. Yeah.
So this is 10%. It might be a bit stronger now.
Wow. Wow. That is unbelievable. It's interesting because I've drank quite a lot of this back when it was around the time it was brewed. And it's a different beer now, after 14 years in the bottle. Lost some of its fizz, not that surprising, but it's still there. But the flavours have evolved and like coalesced and resolved themselves completely differently. Like, it starts off kind of chocolatey, and then it goes kind of slightly sherried and nutty. There's certainly a huge amount of fruit in there as well.
Yeah.
So
Licorice.
Yeah. It's just like it tastes like something you couldn't just make in the next week, and then and it tastes like that, you know.
No, and I think this is why, there are not many bottles of this left in the world, and it's moments like this again, for that one of the reasons why I do my job, but to share it, especially share it with someone who's been on the journey.
Oh, that's right.
Conception.
Yeah.
Because when it was first brewed, it was vibrant, and it was that barley wine. It was
Quite boisterous.
Rambunctious. Look at me.
Yeah.
And all of that, and it's just matured into this mellow, a mellow elegance that is so complex.
It's like you, Ed. Basically liquid Ed Hughes.
Liquid Ed.
It was this rambunctious, untamable character.
And now we've got old and complex and grumpy.
Now it tastes like sherry and chocolate.
Oh, incredible. I love that.
What's it going to taste like in another 16 years, do you think? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Miserable.
Miserable. Yeah. Belligerent, cynical, sarcastic. Still going on about craft.
Well, you open it and it's actually empty.
Devoid of any soul. Dead behind the eyes.
Use that up on other people. Oh, dear. But yeah, it's like, there's so much. And I've said it for many years. Like, it's a beer with delusions of grandeur. It thinks it's a Pedro Jimenez, and when it was young, it really did.
Yeah.
I've got raisins. Whereas now it's mellowed and gone, yeah, sherry cask.
Yeah.
No cask aging.
Yeah.
Like, this was brewed and it's been kept in a bottle. Like, it's got all the stuff of a Pedro Jimenez, a sherry. There's tobacco now, like oak aged red wine that it never had to start off with. It is fascinating.
It's it's like a really good sherry cocktail. With sort of bits of chocolate and some carbonation, some length to it, and yeah, it's amazing. So
I did a take of your rum and raisin martini with this.
Yeah.
And so that was, rum, Pedro Jimenez, stirred like an old fashioned, then I topped that with this.
Yeah, it worked very, very well. And I've tried it, I think, for you.
And flame orange zest, yeah.
Yeah. It's just remarkable to taste something as sort of deliciously evolved and matured out of a bottle. And, we've talked a lot widely about beer and how it competes with wine in a food sense. And I think this is liquid proof that you can do this sort of vintage thing with it and lay these things down and try them years later, and they've changed for the better, maybe, for the worse, maybe, different, definitely.
But at least it's studied. And I remove my competitive nature and wine and beer's better than wine. Just a little bit of my mission is just look at beer a little bit differently for all of us.
Yeah.
I'm still learning things. And I think that's what I've realized in this ridiculous career. They're just going, just look at beer a bit differently. Look at it as an ingredient, or it doesn't have to be a pint of something you always drink. Because I think that's where it can get misconstrued of that's what I drink, that's what I like. Just go on your own sort of voyage of discovery. Even you, Lord of Drinks, have tried something new today.
Lord of Drinks. That might be my new Instagram handle.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Hughes, everyone. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, mate.
Thanks, brother. That was great.